Imagine you on a normal workday, but the next day civilization is destroyed and the only ones left are you and the most beautiful superior at your job, forced to survive together in the middle of a brutal winter, in an empty world with only 2 people left. The story begins with a few people working in an office. On the phone, a man confirms that the requests have been logged and guarantees the issue will be resolved in 3 days. As his shift at Grand Glory Limited ends, Howard feels like his entire life is just about work. His boss approaches and warns him to work harder, as the company is planning layoffs soon. Mr. Wang hands him a list of potential clients to call and introduce himself to the next day. Typing quickly, Howard gets lost in his work. Suddenly, the monitor glitches and he recoils from the screen, startled. The screen's reflection glints in his eye. A colleague turns around and asks what's happening. Head down, he's seen with a hand on his forehead. Howard says he's fine, but his vision got blurry and his colleague advises him to get some rest. He then reminds him about the dinner with Mr. Wang, and Howard asks if there's really another one. Checking his phone, he notices the low balance in his bank account. His colleague sees his hesitation and asks if he doesn't want to go. Donald offers to lend him money, but Howard refuses, saying he just hates socializing. Donald insists there's no choice, as the new director will be there and everyone has to attend. As a woman approaches, he quietly warns him of her arrival. Miss Luo walks through the office, drawing everyone's attention. Howard recognizes her as Sabrina Luo and remarks that women like her are out of his league. At night, the scene shifts to the front of an illuminated hotel. During dinner, 2 glasses clink in a toast. Everyone is gathered around a lavish table, enjoying the lively meal. Suddenly, Howard's expression changes. A diagram reveals that his iris, optic nerves, cortex, and central nervous system have been interconnected. Confused, he observes his surroundings while the man next to him drinks calmly. A strange image appears before him. The figure claims that Star Universe Limited designs all sensory organs, including the mind, to enable silent communication. Howard asks what they want with him, but the figure replies that he is the ideal candidate for their dream tests. The entity invites him to be the tester for the Dreamland, promising countless different life experiences. Asking only to be left alone, Howard explains that he needs to work the next day and has no time for this craziness. The voice states that the system can create duplicates of anyone from the real world in the Dreamland, allowing him to decide their fate. Soon, Miss Luo and Mr. Wang appear at the door, and she comments that he seems dissatisfied with what he has now. Mr. Wang formally introduces the new director, Miss Luo, whom they may have already met at the company. He then points to a colleague as his great helper, a team leader in the advertising department, and she greets him with a smile. Howard watches his colleagues suck up to the boss, praising the latest project and crediting all the merit to his brilliant decisions. Continuing the flattery, the man shakes Mr. Wang's hand, who then prepares to introduce Mr. Gao, the copywriter. A hand appears, offering a cordial handshake. Turning around, Miss Luo asks who Howard is. Standing up, he tries to introduce himself to the new director, but Mr. Wang cuts him off, saying he's a nobody. Howard remains silent in the face of humiliation. A memory shows his colleagues congratulating him for landing a difficult client, while his boss's voice describes him as someone with mediocre talent. In another memory, he presents a bold proposal to Mr. Wang, who questions his ability and tells him to just do his job. Back in the present, the boss ends the evening by telling them not to waste time on him and wishes everyone a good night. Donald watches everything in silence. Outside the hotel, the colleagues say their goodbyes and agree to see each other at work the next day. Reflecting on everything, Howard acknowledges that although he had hoped for recognition for his hard work, nothing turned out as he had imagined. Donald touches his shoulder and advises him to pick a side, reminding him that sucking up to the boss could be useful. A memory from his college days shows his friend protesting against injustice and the obligation to bow to power. Howard comments that Donald is completely different from how he was in college. Meanwhile, Mr. Wang tells Miss Luo that she didn't need to waste time on low-level employees, but she calmly replies that she knows what she's doing. Wang claims her gestures sent mixed signals, which might make some believe they can take on more than they're capable of. He concludes that if someone doesn't understand their place and duty, they will end up being fired. After some thought, Howard decides he'll think about quitting the next day, but first he needs to vent his anger. The system issues an error alert stating it can only scan one person at a time and that the target will be Sabrina Luo. Surprised, he reacts to the information. The system then confirms that the scan is complete and the character has been created. Night falls over the apartment building, wrapping everything in silence. Inside his room, Howard complains that he wasn't warned the system could only scan one person, while the AI detects a dopamine spike in his brain. The system concludes that he's enjoying it, but he denies it, saying he just found it interesting to have an NPC assistant in the game. The entity informs him that the Dreamland system will activate at midnight and that he needs to find a place to sleep, but Howard shows concern. His eyes suddenly widen. Lying in bed, he confesses he's too nervous to sleep, but the system replies that it had already anticipated this reaction. The AI then explains it will interfere with his ascending reticular activating system to induce sleep. In front of him, various mathematical formulas appear. floating in the air. Soon, his body relaxes and he falls into a deep sleep. Suddenly, he wakes up with a start and falls to the floor. A woman approaches and says they've finally met, prompting him to ask who she is. She introduces herself as the AI assistant he was talking to and the administrator of the Dreamland system, asking him to call her AI-63. Howard asks if the test has already started, but she explains that supplies are always needed before a battle, and that there's a shop where he can buy items with his credit points. AI-63 raises an elegant staff in her hands. The number 1 appears projected on a wall ahead. They're in a long hallway filled with numbered doors, and AI-63 points to one of them. A military machine gleams on display, priced at 2 credit points. As they walk, they see a 100-ton truck for 40 points, a coat for 20, and food for just 1. Approaching an infinite energy battery on display, Howard curiously reaches out his hand. AI-63 scolds him with a tap of her staff, warning him not to touch anything unless he intends to buy it. She explains that by overcoming challenges, he will earn credit points to purchase new items. Howard thanks her for the explanation and asks if there are any really strong NPCs within the system. With a slight smile, AI-63 points to herself with her thumb. She soon informs him that 10,000 credit points have been debited and she is now at his service, which she calls a blatant ripoff. AI-63 announces that the Dreamland will be activated immediately if he has no more questions. Wishing him fun, she watches as he stares at a door marked Apocalypse Survival. An invisible force shoves him through the passageway. Howard suddenly wakes up in his bed. Sitting up, he looks around, confused. He realizes he's home and concludes that nothing seems to have changed. Calling himself a fool for not thinking of this before, he decides to get ready for work. He tries to turn on the light, but nothing happens. In the bathroom, he discovers the power is out. Already dressed, he walks down the stairs in silence. Outside, he finds the street completely deserted, with a truck stopped in the middle of the road. He looks around and wonders where everyone went. Looking up, he sees a military plane crossing the sky at a low altitude. Suddenly, the aircraft explodes in midair. Taking cover behind a car, he ducks down as debris rains down around him. A voice echoes, announcing that the Apocalypse Survival Dreamland has begun and that he has 180 days to fight. Stunned, he repeats the mention of 180 days out loud. Something splatters near him. Looking to his side, he sees a strange liquid dripping down the car's body. Without a second thought, he bolts into a run as another explosion detonates behind him. The image of a plane spiraling out of control makes him shudder. He soon realizes that in a world where people have disappeared, planes could fall from the sky at any moment. Determined, he makes a list of supplies, planning to use the 180 days to prepare for life after quitting his job. Before that, however, he thinks maybe he should have a little fun and presses play on an old radio. With the radio propped on his shoulder, he walks into a men's clothing store. In front of the mirror, he tries on a new coat and puts on sunglasses. Next, he picks out a necklace and a bottle. With his new look, he walks down the street carrying the radio. Suddenly, he remembers he has a duplicate of Sabrina Luo as his assistant. Leaning against a police car, he uses the radio to ask when she will appear. A noise cuts through the silence, making him look to the side. A dog approaches and starts barking at him. He wonders where Sabrina Luo is and if he's been tricked by the game developer. Unexpectedly, a tiger appears on the street in front of him. Turning quickly, he runs as the animal's paw lunges toward him. The tiger, known as Dummy, the only carnivore from the zoo, starts licking his face. An old photo reveals the animal was raised by zookeepers and had always been docile with humans. Pulling away, he notices a peculiar feature on the tiger and deduces the animal escaped after the zookeepers disappeared. With his face still dirty, he is impressed by the level of detail created by the game developer. 7 days later, he enters an establishment carrying a pack of water bottles. Since the water supply has been cut off, he now relies solely on bottled water from supermarkets. Without electricity, the meat and vegetables are starting to rot, attracting swarms of flies everywhere. Although he has found some crackers to survive on, the lack of vitamins worries him. In front of a restaurant, he finds something that could change his luck. Inside, he discovers a diesel generator and remembers that his father's grocery store had one just like it. Kneeling beside the machine, he notices it's overheating and could break at any moment. He realizes that if he had arrived a second later, he would have lost the power and all the frozen meat in the fridge. With a working generator and a refrigerator at his disposal, he decides to live there, planning to gather supplies by day and cultivate the land by night. Wielding a pickaxe, he begins to work the soil with determination. On the 31st day, the camera shows a completely deserted and silent street. Inside the car, Howard wonders what he should do that day. A voice beside him suggests looking for seeds, but he replies that he just thought of something better. Immersed in despair, he feels like giving up on everything, believing that if he did, he would wake up and everything would go back to normal. His companion tries to cheer him up, reminding him that the garlic plants have finally sprouted and that he'll soon have fresh vegetables. Howard shouts that the vegetables aren't the problem. He complains that the city is filthy, infested with flies, and he feels a deep unease with the situation. At night, the darkness and silence make him feel as if the world has completely abandoned him. The voice taunts him, asking if he really has any useful real-life skills and if he could survive after quitting his job. It advises him to wake up, saying that he's the one playing the game, not the other way around. Howard realizes that even inside a game, they're trying to convince him to surrender to reality. A sudden flash of light cuts across the road, making him slam on the brakes. The car skids on the pavement as he tries to swerve out of another vehicle's way. In shock, he sees that the driver of the other car looks exactly like Sabrina Luo. The two cars collide. Turning to the passenger seat, he stares at the mannequin beside him and questions if that figure is really Sabrina Luo. Waking up in a bed, the woman stares at the ceiling for a moment. Touching her face, she feels the bandage covering the wound. Noticing she's wearing men's clothes, she silently wonders where she is. Rising slowly, she walks to the door and opens it. In the next room, she finds a small kitchen as the sound of a generator fills the air. She immediately recognizes the diesel engine running. On the table, she sees fresh food carefully served. A young man then appears holding a razor, commenting that she's finally awake. He casually invites her over, saying he prepared the meal for her. Sitting at the table, the woman recognizes him from an old work dinner and asks for his name. He introduces himself as Howard Chen, surprised that she already knows who he is. Sabrina questions him about how he managed all this, but he turns the question back on her, curious about what she did for the last month. She explains that she went back to her hometown only to find it empty, and that he's the only living person she's seen. Howard understands why he hadn't seen her before and asks what her plan is. Without much thought, she replies that she has no plan at all. Decisively, Howard proposes that she stay and live there with him. He explains that the place has everything they need and that her life will be better this way. Sabrina accepts, admitting she has no other choice, and he understands she's now part of his team. Before they seal the deal, she warns him that she needs to say something. Howard asks what it is. Calmly, Sabrina informs him that he's not her type and that she hopes they can maintain a certain distance. Howard's silence is immediate, intrigued that she would point this out. Nearby, the mannequin representing Donald appears, and he reflects on his desperate need for a friend. He recalls how he was always judged before people even got to know him. With his hands clasped on the table, he accepts her conditions. Sabrina offers to help take care of the house while he works, not wanting to be a burden. He agrees to the arrangement and recommends she get some rest, as they will start working the next day. Taking a deep breath, Howard mentally repeats that this is all just a game, with no connection to his real life. On the 32nd day, he wakes up to a loud noise echoing from outside his room. Still in bed, Howard wonders why there's so much noise so early and what Sabrina is doing. Stopping at the foot of the stairs, he sees the floor covered in cardboard boxes. Walking up the steps, he questions what she's been up to. Sabrina explains that she cleaned out the warehouse to turn it into a bedroom and shows him a walkie-talkie so they can communicate. Surprised, he reacts to the unexpected idea. He then asks about the mannequin he had left there, and she replies that she threw it out because she found it creepy. Reprimanding her, he says she should have asked first, and Sabrina retorts, asking if he really needed it. Howard tells her the mannequin was his companion, like Wilson to Tom Hanks, something that helped him not feel so alone. She offers to go get it back, but he refuses, stating that he can take care of it himself. Stepping on something on the floor, he stops for a moment. He remembers collecting some security items from a police station and putting them all in a box. He then realizes that one of the items, which he had prepared for use, was missing. Sabrina's watchful gaze follows him. Finding him near the elevator, she asks if he isn't going to look for supplies that day. Howard changes the subject and suggests they do their laundry and cook separately, which makes her question why. He explains that by seeing each other less often, she wouldn't have to be on guard, and he wouldn't feel so uncomfortable. Sabrina asks if he can't just act like a gentleman, reminding him that as a woman, she needs to protect herself. He retorts that her safety is based on his suffering, since he has to endure constant insults and orders. He looks at her firmly and asks why he should accept that. He declares he's not the gentleman she imagines, but he guarantees he won't hurt her, advising her to be more pragmatic. Turning her face away in silence, she ends the conversation. On the 120th day, a butterfly lands on the red roses blooming in the city. As he enters the house, Howard notices how much the place has changed in the last 3 months. The air is fresher and the stench has vanished amid the greenery covering the buildings. Outside, Sabrina waters the plants lining the street, turning the neighborhood into a green refuge. Under her care, the garden grows strong and vibrant, putting an end to the vegetable shortage. Even so, since their first fight, the two haven't exchanged a word, and Howard decides he can no longer stand the silence. Inside the car, he asks Donald if Sabrina has lost her mind for confronting the rats in the garden. The mannequin in the passenger seat seems to reply that she no longer needs a social life. Setting a new goal, Howard announces they're going to find meat, since their supply has run out. He considers eating rats but fears the germs and viruses they might carry. On second thought, he suggests to Donald that fishing would be a safer, more decent option. With the plan set, they leave by car, determined to visit an old friend before going fishing. The vehicle approaches the entrance of the abandoned zoo. At the gate, Howard finds the tiger and greets it, asking how it's been. He pets Dummy's belly, surprised he's still alive. 2 months earlier, the animal would just sit at the zoo entrance, feeding on the remaining herbivores. Howard feeds him again, tossing rats and small animals he caught on the streets. He tells the tiger to go easy, reminding him it's the last piece he has in the freezer. Suddenly, the animal's gaze shifts to the side. In a swift leap, Dummy moves away from him. It charges a group of deer that appears from between the trees. One of them stops nearby, and Howard realizes it's a wild deer. Nature now dominates what was once civilization as the tiger takes down its prey. The rain begins to fall, and a storm gathers on the horizon. Lightning cuts across the sky, making him wonder if the storm is really coming. The wind blows with growing force, and Howard realizes it's a typhoon. Pushed by the violent current, he is thrown toward the car. Fighting the turbulent air, he forces the door open and yells for Donald to let him in. Inside the vehicle, he wonders how a Force 10 typhoon can exist so far from the ocean. In silence, he watches the world distort around him. He remembers he's in a land of dreams and wonders if this disaster is part of the game. He also recalls that Sabrina bikes in the mountains every day and must be near the summit. The car speeds through the streets, cutting through the storm that engulfs it. Broken pots roll through the floodwaters, swept away by the wind and rain. The memory of Sabrina tending to her plants comes to his mind. Braking in front of the house, he notices the door wide open and wonders if she's already back. Accelerating again, he drives away through the soaked garden. The tomato plants bend under the force of the gale and the heavy raindrops. Another memory hits him. Sabrina scaring rats away from her vegetables. From inside the car, he calls out for her, not knowing where to look. The winding mountain road appears before him, swallowed by the storm. A bolt of lightning rips across the sky, illuminating the path for a moment. His eyes widen at the silhouette ahead. Slamming on the brakes, he sees Sabrina standing by a post completely soaked. Her leg is injured, and she can barely stand. As he holds her in his arms, he hears her muffled question about dying there. Firmly, he lifts her and replies that's not going to happen. With a lighter in his hands, Howard sparks a small flame. He uses the fire to bring to life the crackling bonfire in the brazier. In the warm room, he asks Sabrina about the mansion on the mountain and if she used to visit it often. Hugging her knees, she remains quiet, her leg still injured. Howard watches her without a word, studying her every restrained gesture. He offers to check the wound, but she firmly refuses. He warns that an infection could be fatal, but Sabrina insists she can handle it herself. Frustrated, he backs off and mentions he just had an idea. He explains that the mountain mansion is the highest and safest point to take shelter from the flood. Decisively, he states they need to hurry and take as many supplies as possible, and she asks what she should do. He replies that with her injured leg, she should just rest and wait. Sabrina warns him to ventilate the area to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. He then returns to the old house facing the storm outside. Under the heavy rain, he takes a deep breath and feels the air growing colder. He pulls the hood over his head, puzzled to see snow mixed in with the raindrops. The car pushes through a waterlogged road. The water level rises quickly around the submerged house. With a tool, he unlocks the door underwater. Inside the flooded home, he notices the power is out and concludes the generator failed. The freezer door swings open, letting water rush inside. He decides to gather as much food as possible since the appliance is lost. A wave surges through the house, scattering everything around. Vegetables float in the current, mixed with mud and debris. Trying to save what's left, he struggles to grab the food being swept away. Now, the few vegetables and scraps from the fridge are only enough for 2 meals. As he closes the car door, he realizes with regret that their supply is about to run out. Holding his head, Howard realizes fishing is impossible, and even the rat holes are flooded. He admits in a low voice that when he finally gives up, he won't know how to handle such a situation. Turning to the mannequin, he asks what he should do to find food and save them both. Silence fills the car as he thinks. Suddenly, he breaks upon seeing the tiger sitting on the flooded street. Through the window, he yells for Dummy, pleading for his help. As he gets closer, he notices the wounds on the animal's face and asks what happened to it. He proposes they become hunting partners, reminding him that the tiger is a skilled tracker and he has weapons. He tries to convince it to get in the car, warning that the road will soon be underwater. The tiger just stares at the horizon, motionless. Then Dummy turns and starts walking back to the zoo. Howard yells that he's not a dog and that the zookeepers are never coming back. He reminds the animal that he fed it for 2 months and asks if they aren't friends. The tiger turns and roars loudly, its reply roaring against the sound of the storm. Angry with himself, Howard scolds himself for getting so invested in a pointless game. Saying goodbye, he says he respects its choice and that he probably won't be back. The rain keeps falling on the tiger, motionless under the downpour. As he drives away, Howard tells the animal to stay strong and stay alive, leaving it alone in the storm. He's driving down a dark road during a storm. At the wheel, Howard keeps his eyes fixed ahead. He asks Donald how he manages to stay so calm, saying he needs to learn how to do the same. Suddenly, something on the road catches his attention. The car slams on its brakes, skidding on the water. Lying on the pavement, Sabrina appears right in front of the vehicle. Howard gets out and runs to her, asking what happened. She explains she was trying to collect rainwater so she wouldn't owe him anything. He replies that she just ended up falling and giving him more work to do. Her gaze lifts in silence. Howard lifts her and carries her, ignoring her protest to be put down. Sabrina struggles, trying to break free. In a firm voice, Howard declares he has enough problems and that from now on, he's making all the decisions. When they arrive, he impatiently places her on the bed. He tells her to wait while he gets the first aid kit, warning her he won't show any mercy if she does anything foolish. Sabrina yells that she can take care of her own wounds and doesn't need his help. He retorts that he isn't happy about helping her either, reminding her they only have 2 meals left before starvation sets in. He demands she recover quickly to contribute, or they'll both be in trouble. While cleaning a wound on her arm, Sabrina asks what the plan is. Tending to her injured leg, he tells her he saw a herd of deer and plans to hunt the next day. She doubts they exist in the city, but Howard explains they must be wild, having appeared after people vanished. Sabrina warns him that wild animals are smart and asks if he scared them off. He looks away in silence. The memory of Dummy chasing the deer flashes through his mind. The animals run in terror across the waterlogged field. Howard finishes the bandage, saying he's not sure, but he still has gear. Remembering this, he mentions he has something important to tell her. He reveals he found a pistol under her pillow while cleaning up the old house. Handing it to her, he explains that he left the bullets inside. Sabrina takes the gun and asks why he doesn't keep it for himself. Howard explains that desperate times call for desperate measures, hoping the gesture will make Sabrina change her mind. He then tells her to get some sleep as he needs to prepare for the next day's hunt. On day 121, snow covers the roof and the area around the house. Looking out the window, he remarks how amazing it is to see snow falling again. Ready to leave, he says his memory tells him the deer usually stay in a lower part of the mountain. His destination is a suburban area, overgrown with vegetation but not high enough to have been flooded. As he drives, he admits to himself that Sabrina's words affected him, and he hopes the deer won't recognize his scent. He wonders if he'll have the courage to capture one, considering he's never successfully hunted before. He also brings fishing nets as a precaution, hoping they might work even without bait. Suddenly, a faint sound cuts through the silence. A paw sinks into the snow next to the parked car. Moments later, a pack of wolves appears ahead, blocking his path. Advancing through the snowy forest, Howard grips his weapon tightly. Deer hooves thunder across the snow. Hearing the sound of running, he turns, trying to pinpoint the direction. Moving between the trees, he looks for an advantageous position. The hunter raises his weapon and takes quick aim. He laments the animal's disappearance once again, losing count of how many times this has happened. A new noise catches his attention, and he concludes the deer are still nearby. He follows the tracks in the snow, but eventually loses them. It seems the creatures know his every move and are toying with him. Leaning against a tree, he concludes that maybe Sabrina was right about his scent. He decides he's just wearing himself out and resolves to try his luck with the fishing net. The river flows swiftly through the white-covered landscape. Remembering yesterday's storm, he wonders if he'll be able to fish in these waters. He quickly casts the net into the river. The mesh sinks into the current. He mutters to himself that he only brought one net and can't afford to lose it. The rope remains tied to the bank. Suddenly, the line pulls taut with immense force. Something yanks violently, and he reacts instinctively. The impact drags him forward. Howard plunges into the icy water, his gun flying to the side. Sinking completely, he disappears into the river. The young man emerges, gasping for air. Dragging himself out, he curses the disastrous day. Trying to warm up, he says he's freezing and should probably head home. But then a deer appears before him. In disbelief, he watches the animal so close. He wonders where he left the rifle and if he lost it in the river. He then grabs a shotgun, figuring it'll work for short range. Weapon in hand, he prepares to fire, telling himself this is his only chance. Howard takes a deep breath before shooting. The deer calmly drinks water from a patch on the snow. He fires his weapon. The shot hits a tree and the deer flees. His nose aching from the recoil, he remarks that the developers really nailed the realism in this game. He calls himself a fool for losing his things and getting hurt. His stomach growls, and he wonders if he's going to starve out here. Suddenly, a howl cuts through the silence. In the distance, two silhouettes appear in the snow. Two wolves approach, sniffing the tracks left on the white ground. Sensing the danger, Howard readies his shotgun. But the animals just turn and walk away. Not understanding why they fled, he watches until they disappear. Back at the house, he approaches the gate. In the room, he finds Sabrina sitting next to a small fire. She greets him with a brief comment about his return. Then, she asks what he's been up to. Howard explains that he fell in the river and just wants to warm up a bit. Sabrina comments on his condition, while he, with his back to her, apologizes. Averting her gaze, she pretends not to notice. On the bed, an open wallet reveals a photo of him with another woman. Sabrina asks about the photo inside his wallet. She wants to know if the woman in the picture is his girlfriend. Howard corrects her, saying it's his ex. She comments that the girl looks cute and asks why they broke up. He explains that he wanted a family, but she wasn't ready to settle down. Then he decides to ask about Sabrina's love life. She confirms she has one and says his name is Lawrence, a tech company executive. Howard calls him brave, but says it must be a challenge living with a woman like her. Annoyed, Sabrina reminds him that she's his boss. She shifts abruptly on the bed, and an awkward silence falls between them. Howard, flustered, looks away. Sabrina, embarrassed, asks him to leave. Agreeing, he leaves the room. Outside, he reflects that the agitation doesn't help him endure the cold or the hunger. On days 122 and 123, he crawls through the snow, seeing only the distant shadow of a deer. He knows that if he gets too close, all his effort will be for nothing. Lying in the snow, he thinks about how he's never used a real gun and must be a terrible hunter. Besides, he knows the shotgun is useless at long range. A gunshot echoes through the forest. The scene is now empty, and his inability to reach the deer feels like a bad omen. On days 124 and 125, Sabrina starts talking to him more, not complaining when he returns empty-handed. Howard finds her to be sensible with a strong sense of independence. He decides not to tell her about the wolves, certain she would insist on sharing the risk. Growing weaker, she struggles with wounds that won't heal, while hunger consumes them both. He says they might get something the next day because he built a trap. The device is a deep pit covered with cabbage leaves. He believes the cold will make the deer give in to the bait. Sabrina scolds him, saying he should have discussed the plan with her, since manual labor is dangerous. Agreeing that they have no strength left, he declares that tomorrow they will either succeed or fail. The car drives down the snow-covered road. Soon, the vehicle is parked in the middle of the white forest. Howard gets out and walks ahead. Approaching the trap, he finds it completely empty. Suddenly, something catches his eye. In the trap, there are signs that an animal narrowly escaped. He breaks into a run through the forest, following the tracks. He pleads in a low voice for a deer to fall into the trap, believing just one could change everything. Tumbling into the snow, he looks up and sees the wolves before him. His gaze shifts to the side. The wolves have a deer carcass. Quickly readying the shotgun, he prepares to shoot. Howard fires, yelling at them to get out and drop his kill. But the wolves just grab their prey and run. Defeated, he falls to his knees in the snow, reminding himself that this is all just a game. On his knees, he screams in frustration. A tomato and a lettuce leaf are all that's left. Howard notes that's all the food they have. Sabrina tells him he can have it all, saying she doesn't deserve it because she hasn't helped. He asks if she can't just put her pride aside for a minute, since they're in a tough spot. For a moment, she falls silent. Then she begins to tell him that before she turned 18, she was just a puppet in the hands of others. She explains that she spent most of her time locked in her room. Her father decided what she could and couldn't do. Young Sabrina wondered why she couldn't play like her brothers. She wasn't even allowed to dream. Her father tears up her drawing, saying she would leave the family one day, just like her mother did. He claimed that without the family's power, she would be nothing, and that obeying him was the only way to bring honor. Her hand clenches into a fist over the pieces of the torn drawing. Back in the present, she explains that being independent is her way of fighting and the source of her confidence. Sabrina asks how that sounds and if it's different from what he imagined. Howard agrees that they're all facing a difficult time. He vents that he works hard for no reward and that maybe it's all useless, since he doesn't know what the future holds. Even so, he states that his strength lies in not giving up once he decides to do something. She asks if he's ever fought for what he wants most, reminding him that the world is full of hardworking people. She explains that the only way to be recognized is to stand out from the rest. Sabrina says that independence is the light of her life and that he'll discover what he truly wants when he fights for a goal. Howard remains silent, listening. Then he asks if helping her survive will earn him her recognition. He confesses he wishes his superiors would one day say he's good at what he does and that the place would fall apart without him. Sabrina retorts that she can't prove her independence if he helps her, but he asks her to be kind, as they're in danger. She agrees, saying she'll do it if she still has a voice by then. Howard takes the food and promises he'll shine for her. Rising with difficulty, he stumbles too weak to stay on his feet. Then he stops and turns back, saying that if he's not back by the third morning, there's a stream east of the mansion. He concludes that she'll find him there and know what to do. The bedroom door slams shut. Sabrina remains silent, staring at the still wood. Outside, snow continues to fall on the house. In the midst of a hallucination, Howard carries the figure of Donald and admits Sabrina was right. He never truly fought. He remembers saying he didn't give up, but now he realizes that was never entirely true. He recognizes that he's always lacked the courage to pursue his own goals. He confesses that he usually chooses the easiest path to escape bad places and difficult decisions. He thinks he could have been better with his family, in his studies, and with his girlfriend. But in the end, he always hides in a safe corner where he can keep complaining. Turning around, he leaves the memory of Donald behind. He promises himself he will stop complaining. He vows he will never do that again. Back in the present, he pulls himself together. Then, he slips and falls from the snow-covered cliff. The fire burns intensely inside a small metal box. Sabrina grabs a utensil from the knife block in the kitchen. She stands, holding it over a figure lying on the floor. Howard is lying down, his eyes closed. Lifting the utensil, she prepares to make a move. The object comes down with force. Suddenly, Sabrina wakes up. Sitting up in bed, she breathes heavily. The clock reads 5:58 p.m., and she wonders if it was all a dream, the first one in 3 months. Howard's words about meeting him at the stream echo in her mind. Hugging herself, she questions what extreme measures they'll have to take to survive. On day 127, a shovel cuts through the hardened snow. Howard digs, saying that half the work is already done. He pauses and observes the white-covered landscape. He remembers that the first time he fell in the water, he got closer to the deer. He reflects that since then, he hasn't had another chance to get close. Then he wonders if the water could mask his scent. Even though he thinks it's a risky bet, he steps into the icy water. Meanwhile, Sabrina struggles to stay awake. A voice in her mind calls her pathetic. The figure of her father appears, saying she could have led a rich life if she had followed the path he laid out for her. He accuses her of being useless for trying to do more than she can handle. but she screams for the vision to disappear, claiming she can take care of herself. Reaching out, she squeezes the tomato on the small table. Howard's words about wanting to be recognized come back to her. She remembers she promised to wait for 2 days. She decides she will keep her word until dawn and that she will survive alone, with or without him. Time passes, and the clock shows almost 3 in the morning on the 23rd. Lying in bed, she awakens to a sudden noise. Her eyes slowly open in the darkness. A rat approaches the tomato on the nightstand. From the bed, Sabrina watches the scene, motionless. The hallucination of her father begins to laugh. He appears next to the rat and the tomato, asking what she would choose. Then he claims she's too tired to make any choice. He then reveals that Lawrence, the richest man in the world, is sick. He says she could have been raised to be his perfect wife and inherit everything. He accuses her of not being able to endure a little hardship and questions how she can call herself independent. He calls her a pathetic and fragile woman who only pretends to be strong. He predicts she will have a lonely and forgotten end. The rat holds the tomato and taunts her, offering the freedom she so desired. Meanwhile, in the forest, a deer feeds on the cabbage leaves from the trap. The animal raises its head, chewing the bait. It remains motionless under the full moon, surrounded by snow. The image of her father stares at Sabrina with a severe look. She aims the gun, saying she's lived her life to the fullest up to this point. The rat states that it doesn't need to be saved by her. Even so, Sabrina continues, saying she doesn't need anyone to save her life. The deer's eye reflects the white landscape around it. The animal starts to run, carrying the cabbage leaves in its mouth. Suddenly, a gun barrel emerges from the snow. A shot hits the deer, causing it to fall to its side. At the same time, another shot hits the rat and the tomato in the room. The deer falls onto the snow. Soon, a gun and an arm emerge from beneath the white blanket. Howard emerges from his hiding spot. He touches the fallen animal. Lying in the snow, he celebrates his victory. Meanwhile, Sabrina takes a big bite of the tomato. Food cooks over the fire. She chews the tomato slowly. The door opens and wet footprints mark the floor. Howard enters carrying the deer and comments that she's already eating. Sabrina stares at him, silent. He says he didn't need to rush back. His head hangs forward. Howard faints and the deer collapses on top of him. Sabrina rushes to him and asks how he is. Touching his ice-covered back, she asks if he can get up. She holds a piece of ice and wonders if he fell into the river again. Outside, the deer meat is hung to dry in the snow. Meanwhile, water boils in a pot over the fire. Sabrina pours the hot liquid into a bathtub to warm Howard. Next to him, she asks if he's feeling better. Hearing no reply, she just sighs. Suddenly, a hand grabs her wrist inside the tub. She turns, startled by the sudden movement. Howard calls her name. Sabrina looks at him. Moving closer, she leans over him. He asks if he has finally earned her recognition. She is surprised by the question. Then she says he's incredible, and that without him, everything would have fallen apart. Howard smiles, relieved. He recalls the last words his ex-girlfriend said before she left him. She said he had nothing, and that all his effort would get him nowhere. Howard laments how hard it is to gain recognition in the world. Sabrina agrees, admitting it's true. Meanwhile, she prepares a broth with the deer meat over the fire. Holding the bowl, she tells him it's ready and that he should get up to eat. He remains motionless in bed. She approaches and checks his breathing. She confirms that he's still alive. With the spoon in her hand, she states that he won't owe her any favors and that he'll be fine soon. Then she gently touches his face. She leans over Howard. She feeds him the broth. The digital clock reads almost midnight. Watching Howard shiver, she notes that he still seems cold. She recalls that she's already covered him with 3 blankets. Even so, he continues to tremble violently, clutching the covers. Sabrina watches him for a moment. Then she makes a decision. She lies down beside him under the covers, trying to warm him. Hugging him, she reassures him that everything will be alright. Day 130 arrives, bringing a new morning. With his eyes slowly opening, Howard awakens. Hearing a sound, he turns in bed, trying to figure out where the noise came from. Beside him, Sabrina is sleeping soundly. His eyes widen in surprise. Something makes him shudder. He realizes he's not alone. Waking up, Sabrina asks if he's awake yet. She slowly starts to move away, but Howard grabs her wrist, stopping her. His voice is weak as he says he still feels sick, pulling her closer. He immediately wonders what he just said. His grip on her hand loosens, afraid she'll misunderstand him. Sabrina reminds him that he said he broke up with his girlfriend and asks to hear the reason again. He explains it was because she thought they were too young to settle down, but Sabrina insists on knowing the other reason. Silence hangs in the air for a moment. Finally, Howard reveals the other reason was his desire to have a family. With a slight movement, Sabrina moves closer and confesses she wants the same thing. He stares at her, asking if she didn't want to prove she was a strong, independent woman. She replies that she's trying to do that right now. In her mind, a doubt arises whether success truly brings independence. She explains that goal was just a line she drew for herself to break free. She adds that the rest never really mattered, but she questions if that wouldn't just be escaping one prison to fall into another. Venting, she admits she's never made a decision for herself and can't call herself independent. Howard confesses he doesn't know if she could do it, since he's never set his own boundaries. Then Sabrina takes his hands and asks if he wants to have a family with her. Wordless, he hesitates. She apologizes, saying she just realized she needs her own life. But Howard squeezes her hands tightly and says that's exactly what he wants. With a choked voice, he confesses that hard work without recognition pushed him away from the idea of having a family, but now success seems close. Sabrina assures him they will survive, and he agrees that family is what drives him. Their eyes meet for a moment. Without a word, they kiss. Outside, the snow continues to fall silently on the house. Sabrina looks at him with an understanding gaze. In that moment, they share a deep connection. He asks, his voice hesitant, if this is right, and calls her his wife. A quick gesture stops him. Firmly, she corrects him, reminding him they aren't married yet, just two adults living together with mutual respect and support. Embarrassed, Howard looks away. She takes a deep breath. His expression freezes, his mouth slightly open. In Sabrina's mind, a difficult memory returns. Her younger self, feeling powerless. Her father's voice echoes, commenting on how fast time has passed. He steps back, observing her coldly. Finally, he turns and declares it's time for her to learn how the world works. In the memory, Sabrina's father says he's going to teach her a harsh lesson. Calling for others, he orders them into the room. A man and a woman appear, and she greets him, calling him boss. Coldly, he tells them to watch what happens on the couch. The couple agrees. Young Sabrina closes her eyes. A light touch on her head makes her flinch. Grabbing her by the shoulders, her father demands that she watch to learn how to deal with Lawrence Dew. As the scene unfolds, he comments that they need to look like father and daughter, and that he will change her name. From that moment on, she would be called Sabrina Luo. In the present, her voice echoes, saying that now the two of them have a new respect for each other. Inviting him, Sabrina proposes they discover the meaning of their existence. Howard can hardly believe the connection they just shared. Then he realizes, surprised, that this moment was new for Sabrina too. On day 160, he wakes up to the realization that they've been living like a couple for a month. Reflecting, he admits the last month has been relatively satisfying. He regrets still not being fully recovered from the frostbite, but at least he can work. With the deer meat gone, he walks out to the snow-covered yard. The constant cold turned the river to ice, and they cut holes to fish. On top of that, Sabrina took on the extra work of building a vegetable greenhouse, which is now almost finished. Suddenly, her voice calls out, telling him to wait. With a smile, she announces she has a gift for him. Howard jokes that nothing excites him more than a long, tight hug. A gunshot shatters the forest's silence, and a deer falls in the snow as another one watches. He comments that it's not as good as a hug, but the deerskin poncho will do. He thinks about how hunting deer seemed impossible before, but now everything has changed for the better. The poncho helps him camouflage against the white snow. Soon a car appears, driving down the snowy road. At the wheel, Howard keeps his eyes fixed on the road. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees Sabrina's reflection in the side window. The vehicle rests on a snow-covered street. For a moment, old memories flash before his eyes. Crossing the snowy road, he reaches an urban area where a crashed plane rests on a car. The rusty sign indicates the name of the place, Petting Zoo. Pushing the gates open, he calls out for Dummy, asking if he's still alive. With a piece of meat in his hand, he says he brought something special. A distant roar cuts through the silence, making him shudder. Walking with difficulty through the snow, he feels the pain throbbing in his leg. Suddenly, he stops, spotting something ahead. A pack of wolves surrounds Dummy's body. Falling to his knees, he screams at the animals. The wolves turn, growling at him. Raising his gun, he fires. The shot hits its targets, and he yells at them to get away. Startled, the wolves scatter, disappearing among the wreckage. With trembling steps, he approaches and tells Dummy that he's safe now. His expression saddens as he sees the animal's condition. The tiger tries to move its head, breathing with effort. Howard reaches out and touches his companion's body. In his memory, the animal licks his face affectionately. He holds the tiger's head with both hands, as if saying goodbye. Another memory surfaces, him feeding it a piece of meat. Back in the present, he mutters an apology for taking so long. His gaze sweeps over the wounded animal. With a choked voice, he readies the shotgun and promises that soon there will be no more pain. He says he'll miss him and swears revenge. His reflection appears in the still tiger's eye. A tear slides down his face after ending his friend's suffering. Alone, Howard relaxes in the hot water of the tub. Behind him, Sabrina comes in and asks what happened. Noticing his downcast look, she wraps him in a hug as he murmurs that it's nothing, just that the world is getting colder and more dangerous. In a low voice, he asks her to stay home for the next few days, saying it's too risky outside. She agrees, mentioning she still has work to do on the greenhouse, and tells him to be careful. Sabrina leans in and kisses him softly. In his memory, he was walking through the snow without a warm home, consumed by his own sadness. In the present, he rests his head on her chest. He reflects that now that he has what he always wanted, wild creatures are lurking in the darkness. Silently resolving, he promises not to let anything threaten their beautiful home. With his eyes fixed on her, an intense glint appears in his gaze. He vows to eliminate anyone who invades his territory. Dressed as a deer, he moves through the snow with his shotgun, wondering who his next prey will be. From deep within the forest, a pack of wolves emerges and begins to chase him. Surrounded by snow, he feels the danger closing in. A giant grizzly bear appears behind him. The beast leaps, opening its mouth in a deafening roar. The deer costume is damaged amid the sound of tearing fabric and churning snow. All around, the wolves howl at the scene. One of them pricks up its ears and darts toward a bush that's moving with antlers. Suddenly, the wolf is hit by a clean shot. The howl of pain echoes through the frozen forest. Howard emerges from the snow, wielding a knife. With a swift movement, he lunges at the animal. The reflection of the clash shines in his eye. In the bedroom, Sabrina calls to him as they lie in bed. Turning over, he asks what's wrong. She insists on knowing what's bothering him, saying he seems strange all day and offers to help. He thinks that he can't tell her about the fight with the wolves. Hugging her, he says it's nothing and tells her to go back to sleep. Whispering, he warns that there are still 3 left. Among the trees, the wolf pack stares into the darkness. Spreading out in different directions, the wolves run through the snow. One of them stops abruptly while the others continue on. Lowering its snout, it begins to sniff the frozen ground. It moves forward with slow steps, alert to every sound. The scent leads it to a bush where something small is hiding. Crouching down, the wolf peers through the leaves. A short howl rings out, calling its companions. As it gets closer, it bites a fake bait attached to a shotgun barrel. The trap fires, the shot tearing through the forest air. Only 2 wolves remain alive in the shadows. A silhouette disguised as a deer moves silently between the trees. From the gloom, Howard appears, and the proof of his victory intimidates the remaining animals. The last 2 back away hesitant, but one of them turns back, letting out a defiant howl. On day 170, 10 days had passed since the wolf hunt began. A gunshot hits a bottle, shattering the glass in the cold air. While practicing his aim, Howard thinks about the 2 remaining wolves who vanished without a trace. The memory of their fierce gaze haunts him, and he promises himself he won't be defeated like Dummy. He'll only find peace once he eliminates the last survivors of the pack. In the distance, Sabrina's voice calls out to him. With a smile, she announces dinner will be steamed fish and roasted meat. She invites him to try the food, proud of having become a better cook. He refuses, saying he's going to clean the tent and leave for a few days. Her face falls, and her head droops at his response. In a restrained tone, she asks why he leaves so early and comes back so late, too busy to have dinner with her. Howard apologizes, saying he can't rest until he finishes something important. Turning his back, he avoids looking at her. Sabrina insists that he at least tell her what this important thing is, but he thinks he can't reveal the danger, as she'd be too proud to stand by and do nothing. He walks away, muttering that it's nothing serious. A tear runs down Sabrina's face as she watches him leave. On day 173, a sound of banging awakens Sabrina in her bed. Looking out the window, she calls his name and hears another thud outside. Howard is hammering boards over a window frame. Approaching, she asks what he's doing. Without stopping, he replies that the cold is getting worse. He explains that he just wanted to reinforce the windows and that he'll be done soon. With her arms crossed, she declares she never asked to be protected. He looks away and changes the subject, asking if there's anything to eat. But Sabrina keeps her tone firm, saying he's acting as if the conflicts between them have just vanished. Turning to her, Howard says she's wrong. She admits they rushed their relationship and asks if he thought it was all just a one-night stand. He denies it, saying everything he did was to protect their home, and she demands to know what really happened. Shouting, Sabrina says their home was built on mutual respect and demands to be respected. Howard looks down, tense. Her voice rising, she reminds him they had an agreement. She would stay home while he looked for food since she couldn't help him out there. Howard asks her to stay home for a few days and promises to let her know when everything is resolved. Sabrina just listens in silence. Turning, she begins to walk away slowly. He mentions that he's out of nails and needs to go to the hardware store. He thinks to himself that the 2 wolves are mocking him and the heavy snow will soon erase their tracks. With the temperature dropping to nearly 30 degrees below zero, he concludes he has to stop the hunt. Now his priority is to stay warm and reinforce the doors and windows to keep the wolves out. Inside the car, he reflects on how anxious Sabrina has been and how much he hates fighting with her. He knocks on the door of a silent store. Dressed in the deer costume, he forces the entrance until he gets it open. Looking inside, he notes the place is well preserved and that he'll finally find the tools he needs. While searching for nails, wire, and tape, he wraps someone in a hug from behind. His hand touches a small device on the table. Turning around, he picks up a manual left there. The book has instructions for maintaining diesel generators. Surprised, he brings a hand to his mouth. Flipping through the pages, he realizes he can finally fix the generator. Suddenly, the monitor beside him comes to life. He turns, facing the lit screen. The digital face of AI-63 appears, saying it's been a long time since their last meeting. Howard remains motionless without responding. Then he remembers that all of this is just a dream, something he had almost forgotten. The artificial intelligence warns him that the apocalyptic survival dream will end in 1 week. Stunned, he can only manage to mutter a single word. What? Pinning the note to the front door, Sabrina finishes writing. Walking away through the snow, she pulls a rolling suitcase behind her. Before leaving, she casts one last look back. In the note, she states they need some time apart and asks him not to look for her. Continuing on her way, she leaves without hesitation. In the store, Howard steps on the monitor's shattered screen. He adjusts his backpack's zipper, closing it completely. Throwing it over his shoulder, he comments that he got the maintenance tools and that the power will be back on. Wolf paws approach the store's entrance. Turning his body, he faces the door. The 2 remaining wolves burst into the place, and he says it's bold of them to come after him. Then he admits he understands, since he confronted their pack. The animals take a step forward, invading the store. The pair runs toward him. With a steady gaze, he says he can see they've learned their lesson. Keeping his focus, he faces the two wolves. Positioned in an aisle, he watches the animals at the entrance. Then, he glances to the side. Dashing out of the store, he runs with the wolves hot on his heels. His car moves by itself down the street. He sprints toward the vehicle, but he stumbles and falls in the snow. Cursing, he says his leg has fallen asleep again. A wolf reaches him and attacks. Dragging him through the snow, the animal pins him down. With an effort, he grabs the collar of his coat. The other wolf bites his backpack and pulls hard. The first one attacks his shoulder. Shrugging off the backpack, he pushes one wolf away and uses the bag to hold off the other. Pulling out a tool, he prepares to fight back. Shouting, he takes down one of the wolves, but the other one attacks his arm. Then, the attack comes from behind. Spinning quickly, he strikes the wolf with the tool. The object breaks and falls into the snow. Looking at the broken handle, he complains about the crappy quality. The wolf lunges again to attack him. About to deliver the final blow, the animal readies itself, but the wolf reaches his shoulder with an attack. Raising the tool's handle, Howard tries to counterattack. Hitting the animal hard, he reacts with determination. The wolf recoils from the impact. Howard strikes it again. Hitting the wolf with the handle, he doesn't back down. Persisting with the blows, he continues his attack. He lands another solid hit on the animal. Getting up with an effort, he regains his balance. The tool handle drops in the snow next to the neutralized beast. Grabbing his backpack, he adjusts it against his body. Staggering, he moves away, leaving the defeated wolves behind. In the store, he yells at the screen that he has a question. Questioning, he wants to know if the fantasy world will continue after he leaves and if Sabrina will live on her own. Shouting louder, he says he can't leave her behind and wants to stay there. In the present, the last weakened wolf moves through the snow. Biting the backpack strap, it tries to stop him. Facing it, Howard asks if it wants revenge that badly, but he states he can't offer that. He explains that he needs the backpack to protect her, even if he can't be by her side. In a memory, a distressed Sabrina asks if they'll be able to escape. Holding her in his arms, Howard assures her they will. In the car, Sabrina discreetly wipes away a tear. Parked on the side of the snow-covered road, the red vehicle waits. Ripping the backpack from the wolf's mouth, Howard regains control. On day 177, in a flashback, his fist hits the dashboard. Thrown inside the car by the fight, he loses control. Pulled out of the car by the wolves, he falls into the snow. Reaching back into the vehicle, he declares that he can't be stopped now. A heavy object slides across the floor. Grabbing it quickly, he wonders when Sabrina put it there. With the object ready, he turns to the wolves. He acts against the animals through the open door. A metallic clang echoes off the side of the car as he gets in. Looking at his injured hand, he focuses on bringing the parts back. Certain that fixing the generator will give Sabrina a better chance, he takes a deep breath. The car plows through the snow, but it suddenly brakes. He realizes the oil has frozen and he needs to warm up the vehicle to get it running. Looking at the wound on his hand, he knows he can't wait. The weakened wolf stumbles away through the snow. Inside the car, Howard rests his forehead on the steering wheel and says he hates this. The animal stares back at him, aware that it did everything it could before the end. Waking up in a bed, he feels bandages on his face and head. Seeing Sabrina by his side, he asks what happened and realizes he's home. She tells him she found him passed out with the broken-down car and brought him back. He admits he thought it was the end, and Sabrina says she felt the same when she saw him. Howard asks if she saw anything near him while she was rescuing him. Sabrina replies that he was holding a bag and that she brought it with her. Getting out of bed, he states that the parts are to fix the generator. She tries to stop him, saying he's too weak and needs to rest, but he refuses. Apologizing, he explains that this is the last thing on his bucket list. Lowering her head, Sabrina lets him go, knowing she won't be heard. Howard remains silent for a few seconds. The garage door rises slowly in the frozen night. In the garage, he works on the generator with determination. The house lights flicker on amidst the blizzard. Outside, he stands up under the new light. Satisfied, he says all the effort was worth it. Calling for Sabrina, he yells that the power is back. In the kitchen, she chops vegetables and calls him a fool. Howard celebrates as he crosses the yard back to the house, but he stops suddenly in the middle of the path. His gaze fixes on the red car, remembering that Sabrina drove him home in it. Noticing the deployed airbag and the dented front end, he wonders what the vehicle went through. Coughing beside the red car, Howard tries to catch his breath. Crouched near the front wheel, he continues to cough. Pulling something from the tire chain, he finds a sharp fragment stuck there. In a memory, a wolf charges at the car. Roaring, the animal advances without fear. It slams into the front of the vehicle, lunging with force. Back in the present, he looks at the fragment in his hand. With effort, he gets up from the ground, but he loses his balance and stumbles. Leaning against the car, he avoids falling and lets out another cough. His bandaged hand aching, he knows the confrontation left deep marks. Realizing he won't last much longer without help, he breathes heavily. His gaze falls on the dented hood. He understands that hitting a tree caused the damage. In his memory, a wolf runs alongside the moving car. In that memory, Sabrina is driving at high speed. Crashing violently into a tree, she loses control. Back in the present, Howard coughs and stares into the vehicle. Moving away from the car he limps on. At the house, lights glow in the snowy night. Supplies hang to dry on a wooden frame. In the kitchen, Sabrina chops vegetables with a knife. Coming up from behind, Howard hugs her by the waist. He thanks her for everything she's done for him. She teases, asking when he got so clingy, but he just says he's sorry. Howard suggests a stew for dinner. She calls him silly, but smiles. On day 178, the city remains frozen under the snow, but icy drops begin to drip from the trees. Looking out the window, Sabrina notices the white landscape and announces that the sun is up. Opening the curtains, she tells Howard the storm is finally over. Turning to him, her focus shifts to the room. Approaching the bed, she asks what's wrong with him. Lying down, Howard replies that he's exhausted. She fears it's a cold and offers to get some medicine. Going to the dresser, she opens one of the drawers. But Howard calls her name, and she turns back to him. Telling her not to worry, he says he knows it's not a cold. With an alarmed expression, Sabrina watches him. Trying to calm him, she says he's just kidding and will be fine. Leaning on the dresser, she recalls how he went through the worst of it to fix the generator so they could have power. Bringing a glass, she laments that such a competent employee never got recognition from the boss. As she fills the glass, she assures him she would have named him Employee of the Quarter if they were still at the company. He thanks his boss and his beloved wife. Sabrina hands him the medicine, reminding him she hasn't agreed to marry him yet, and tells him to get well soon. Reaching out, he tries to take the glass, but he suddenly jerks his hand away. Howard stares at the glass, pain evident on his face. Sabrina asks if he's okay. The glass falls and shatters on the floor. In a daydream, Sabrina turns and opens her eyes. Pulling back the sheet, she says she's figured out his trick. Standing by the bed, she accuses him of pretending to be sick just to make her worry. Leaning over him, she comments that she won't blame him and asks if he needs anything. In the fantasy, Howard moves closer to her as they talk. Back in reality, he asks her to get up so they can talk. With a worried look, Sabrina watches him in silence. She then asks if he can't get up. His hand grips the sheet tightly. With tears, she shakes him and yells for him to get up. Howard says he doesn't have much time to explain, as he feels his time is running out. Advising her, he asks her to go north for supplies when the gas, which will last for 3 months, runs out. Then he mentions there are labeled vegetable seeds in a bucket in the warehouse. Asking if she knows how to operate the diesel generator, he says the manual will be easy for her. Finally, he recommends getting a bigger car, choosing a cold-proof house, and not forgetting to practice her defense skills. On day 180, his image appears amidst an intense light. On the porch, Sabrina looks at the landscape and says the snow has stopped, but he corrects her, saying that was yesterday. She comments on the warmer weather and that the temperature will soon be above freezing. Announcing her plans, she states that when the snow melts, she'll go north to find other survivors. Howard sighs and calls her name. Then he asks if she ever loved him. Sabrina stares at him in silence for a few moments. She finally answers no. With a faint smile, he says he has no more worries now. Closing his eyes, he feels it's time to wake from the dream. Sabrina asks how she could love him, saying he's stubborn and never considers other people's feelings. With tears, she says he has no good qualities and never comforted her when she was sad. Holding his hand, she complains that he does everything himself. Kneeling, she accuses him of leaving things scattered around and arguing when she asks him to stop. Crying, she calls him an idiot. AI-63 is beside Howard, who has fallen before a glowing door. The entrance to the dream begins to close. The artificial intelligence congratulates him on completing the apocalyptic survival challenge. Howard slowly wakes up. Sitting up, he holds his head and asks what happened, saying he feels like he's lived through a lot. But she explains it's normal not to remember events precisely, to avoid confusion between the dream and reality. AI-63 assures him that in a month he will gradually remember everything. Howard says he still remembers something. The AI watches him, waiting for him to continue. With tears, he says he can't stop feeling sad when thinking about something important he shouldn't forget. Then he asks if the dream world will continue. AI-63 states that it was just a game and that it's all over. She asks him to remember it was only a dream, as he has a real life to live. Howard watches her in silence. He replies that asking that question is the only thing he remembers, as the rest seems unreal and confusing. Then AI-63 announces she will calculate his score. Her staff activates. Howard looks where she points. A screen shows the final result, difficulty level 0, grade B, and 50 credit points. He questions the reason for the B grade and wants to know the criteria used. She explains that the grade is based on the survival chances of the person left behind in the fantasy world, and that he would have gotten a D if he were the sole survivor. By fending off the beasts and generating electricity, he increases partners' survival chances, securing a higher grade. But if he had obtained equipment, food, and built a transmission station to find other survivors, or even tamed the wild beasts for his own benefit, he would have achieved an S grade. Howard defends himself, saying he's just an ordinary human, but she states that the essence of games is to allow for experiences impossible in real life. AI-63 reveals that this survival challenge was just a level 0 test for beginners and that the official version of the game will be released in a month. Her staff moves closer to Howard's shoulder. A screen displays Frankenstein Invasion with a countdown as the AI asks how people's lives would improve with her help. She says the same criteria will be used in other tests to awaken his sense of justice in real scenarios. Howard then states that human beings are a team with a shared destiny. He says he needs to think about whether he'll continue playing, as he felt sick and exhausted, but she reminds him that he also had happy moments. AI-63 comments that he lived happy moments by her side. An image appears showing him with Sabrina Luo. Surprised, he asks about his time with Ms. Luo. Howard demands she turn off the image and respect his privacy, but she tells him to relax, saying she's just a robot with no emotions. Worried, he asks if Ms. Luo will have those memories in real life, and the AI assures him everything stays in the virtual world. Suspicious, he questions the company's legitimacy and asks how he can leave this place. She explains that to open the system menu, he just has to rub his left eye and repeat the gesture to contact her in real life. As he does this, AI-63 asks if he wants the reward for the completed challenge, and Howard questions if it's just merchandise. He says it's better than nothing, and asks them to send it to his workplace, giving the address. The artificial intelligence moves her staff, and the surrounding scenery begins to dissolve. Howard asks what's happening. As she disappears, AI-63 tells him not to panic, as the system is choosing the appropriate rewards. She continues to fade while reinforcing the explanation. Alone in the darkness, he asks what she meant and calls out for her. Realizing he can't see anything, two enormous eyes open in the darkness, fixing their gaze on him. A giant wolf appears, howling before a snow-covered landscape. Howard says he remembers fighting wolves. The image of the confrontation with the animal comes to his mind. The wolf backs away from him, a heavy footsteps on the snow catching his attention. A gigantic man advances toward him. He prepares to throw a spear. The weapon is thrown at the wolf. The spear hits the creature. The wolf is pinned to the ground as Howard watches, stunned. A notification informs him that he's acquired an excellent hunting skill. Precise throw. Intrigued, Howard wonders what exactly a precise throw is. Waking up in his bed, he hears the annoying sound of the alarm clock. The clock reads 7 in the morning on Monday, September 4th. Sitting up slowly, he tries to understand what's happening. Then, he asks himself why the system woke him up by force. Rubbing his left eye, he tries to clear his thoughts. Staring at his own hand, he wonders where the system went and why everything has vanished. Still confused, he asks himself if he's still dreaming or if the dream is over. In the virtual space, warning lights flash on the metal ceiling. Alone, AI-63 questions why Howard Chen was forcibly disconnected. A new alert appears reporting system failures and the loss of the memory control function. Without hesitation, she orders the error code to be tracked. The system responds that the code is ZS001 and that more information is being loaded. Before her, a large screen forms showing the image of a sleeping Sabrina Luo. Then the screen changes to reveal Sabrina walking with a dangerous object in her hand. The scene then zooms in, showing her raising the object. AI-63 wonders why there would be a new dream within an already existing one. She orders the glitch to be fixed, but the system reports that no fixes are available in the database. Annoyed, the artificial intelligence remarks that she is just a butler robot and questions if she'll have to program the fix herself. In the real world, Sabrina Luo awakens in her bed. Two women beside her ask if she has finally woken up. With tears in her eyes, Sabrina watches them in silence. One of them wants to know what happened during the night. She replies that she had a very long dream, but can't remember the details. Right after, she asks what the two of them were doing in her room. The women exchange glances without saying a word. The nurse explains that she was sleepwalking the night before and asks if she doesn't remember anything. Sabrina then wants to know what she did while she was asleep. The employee says that she picked up a dangerous object in the kitchen and started murmuring. Recalling the scene, the employee says she saw Sabrina there, holding that object and repeatedly apologizing. An image of Howard appears beside Sabrina as she cries. The nurse explains she called the secretary, fearing an accident, and the woman suggests Sabrina take a few days off from work. With tears in her eyes, Sabrina states that it wasn't a dream. With her face in her hands, she confesses it was something far beyond a dream. In the middle of heavy traffic, Howard faces the chaos of the city. Walking through a bustling square, he carefully observes everything around him. A man bumps into his shoulder in the middle of the crowd. Scolded by the pedestrian to be more careful, Howard just apologizes. Thoughtfully, he reflects on the difficulty of readjusting to real life surrounded by so many people. Stopping in front of a food stall, the vendor asks if he wants the usual, and Howard agrees. In a casual way, the man offers to set him up on a date with a relative's daughter. For a moment, the vendor watches him in silence. A flame leaps from the steamer as Howard holds out his hands, and the man asks if he's cold. With a faint smile, he replies that he's just a little cold, as the dream was so real he can still feel the temperature from there. Still, the vendor insists on setting up the date, but Howard smiles and reveals he has a girlfriend now. He falls silent for a moment, his gaze distant. Then the memory of Sabrina Luo in the snow takes shape in his mind. He arrives at the Grand Glorial building. Checking his phone, Howard realizes he's almost late and feels like he hasn't been to work in a long time. A hand touches his shoulder as someone calls his name. Surprised, he turns around and greets Donald, commenting that it's been a while since they last saw each other. With a confused expression, Donald asks if they didn't have dinner together the previous night. Howard apologizes, saying he's still not sober, because for him, 6 months have passed. His colleague advises him to be careful, as their department might be laid off or even shut down. Wanting to know more, Howard asks what happened, and Donald explains that the board will create a marketing division with functions similar to theirs. Fearing the worst, his friend says Mr. Wang will probably fire him first, but Howard states he plans to resign anyway. With a slight smile, he remarks that the world is big and wonderful, questioning why he should follow someone else's rules. The elevator arrives while Donald watches him in silence. Then, his colleague comments that Howard seems to have changed. As he gets into the elevator, Donald adds that he would normally be complaining by now. Now at his desk, Howard admits to himself that he thinks differently. A memory of the dream surfaces, and he reflects that he got used to working hard and having his own life. Leaning back in his chair, he looks at his own desk. He wonders what he should do, feeling like it's been a long time since he was last there. Soon, he grabs a notebook. Sitting down, he starts writing a to-do list, but soon wonders if that's right. He tears out the page, remembering his job is to collect customer feedback. Then, he crumples the paper tightly in his fingers. The paper ball is thrown towards the trash can. The projectile lands perfectly inside the target. Howard turns slowly, staring at the bin. Sitting, he asks himself what that feeling was. He rips another sheet from the notebook, determined to repeat the test. Across the room, the trash can waits, motionless. With his eyes fixed on the target, he prepares for the next throw. His perception of the surrounding environment begins to change. The path between his hand and the bin becomes sharp and precise. He throws the ball of paper. The throw crosses the office and hits the distant bin perfectly. Howard realizes his body adjusted the angle and force on its own. Intrigued, he wonders where this new skill came from. A memory of AI-63 asking about the reward comes to his mind. He recalls the notification he received about the precise throw. Sitting at his desk, he questions how this is possible since he believed it was just a game. Determined, he decides to test the skill from an even greater distance. With a focused gaze, he throws another paper ball. The projectile hits Mr. Wang, who was passing by in the hallway, right in the face. The paper falls to the floor as everyone in the office remains silent. Turning slowly, Mr. Wang orders Howard to follow him to his office. Only then does he realize that, just as Donald had warned, he really made a mistake. As Howard walks through the office, he overhears his colleagues saying he's finished. They call him naive for not knowing about the layoffs, though one of them guesses no one told him. Another employee adds that he heard Howard is buried in debt. From a distance, Donald watches the scene and wonders what's wrong with his friend today. Inside the room, Mr. Wang invites him to sit. Motionless, Howard remains standing in front of his boss's desk. While pouring a cup, the manager repeats his name in a serious tone. Then he states that he really shouldn't have underestimated him. Howard stares at him in silence for a few seconds. Then he decides to get straight to the point. He states that despite this small mistake, he's entitled to last month's pay. With a puzzled look, the manager asks if he isn't forgetting something. Howard asks what, wondering if he found out about the secret online account. Suddenly, Mr. Wang puts a hand on his shoulder and says he owes a lot of thanks for everything he's learned in the past 2 years. He then reveals the company is creating a new department, led by Vice President Mr. Liu, who insists on having him on his team. Touching Howard's cheek, he asks when he became friends with Mr. Liu, but Howard says he has no idea who that is. The manager comments that, just like him, Mr. Liu must have noticed the employee's huge potential. With the cup in his hands, he explains he always knew Howard would be someone important, so he gave him more tasks to learn the ropes. Calmly, Howard replies that he was thinking of quitting. Surprised, Mr. Wang states that a great opportunity has just come up for him. Leaning in, he whispers that the average salary in the new department will increase by 20%. Back at his desk, Donald asks if he really got transferred that easily to the new sector. Howard smiles and explains that since he didn't know where to go, it's better to stay a while longer. A coworker stands up and glares at him, demanding to know why he was chosen. The man exclaims he's a team leader, claims he's made huge contributions, and that he should be the one to get the new job, questioning what Howard did to deserve it. A voice orders him to shut up, and the employee turns to see a man standing behind him. Mr. Wang clears his throat discreetly to get their attention. In a cordial tone, he apologizes to the newcomer for the confusion and invites him in. The man, Mr. Liu, comments on the department's atmosphere and asks if they're doubting his ability to choose an employee. Immediately, the employee raises his hands and denies questioning Mr. Liu's decision. Mr. Wang scolds him, saying he's always reckless and that the position should be filled by someone more qualified. His coworker stares at him, unsure how to respond. The manager then announces that with Howard's transfer, his duties will be redistributed under a new team leader. Turning to Donald, he asks if he'll accept the position. Donald accepts and promises to do a good job. Mr. Wang then dismisses Howard for the rest of the day and tells him to pack his things for the new department. He just silently agrees to the order. Then, Mr. Liu informs him there will be a party for the new department's team after work. He explains they'll discuss plans and meet their new colleagues during the event, and Howard confirms he understands. Before leaving, Mr. Liu assures everyone that the advertising department won't be laying anyone off. After that, he says goodbye and leaves the room, accompanied by Mr. Wang. With a fixed gaze, Howard watches the two of them walk away from the office. Alone, Mr. Liu reviews Howard Chen's resume and recalls Sabrina's request to offer a position to an employee. The scene takes place in the Grand Glory Lord building. Now a leader, Donald informs the team that the department didn't meet its goal for the month. Ignoring his words, one employee fiddles with his phone while another crosses his legs, showing no interest. He realizes no one has responded to his announcement. An employee approaches and comments that he still needs more leadership experience. The coworker adds that since Howard always said he would leave, no one will support him if he fails. They soon tell him to relax, saying the result is the same whether they work hard or not. Elsewhere, Howard's mother asks over the phone if he'll come home for the spring festival, since she hasn't seen him in 2 years. In a gentle tone, he asks if she and his father are okay, and his mother tells him to take care of himself. Howard reassures her, saying he's great, got a raise, and they'll soon pay off the debt. Regretfully, she laments everything her son has been through, but he assures her it will all be okay. As he ends the call, a woman approaches and confirms that he is Howard Chen. Introducing herself as Sandy Dai, a team leader from the marketing department, she mentions she recognized him from his payroll photo. He greets her cordially, and she asks if he's going to the department party. Howard then recognizes the party's location as the same mansion from his memories with Sabrina. Smiling, Sandy explains that Mr. Liu loves throwing parties at his house and invites him to go with her. He agrees to go with her without hesitation. Before they leave, she warns him that Mr. Liu is obsessed with cleanliness, and he asks what he should be careful about. Sandy explains that, for example, he needs to wipe his shoes before entering so he doesn't dirty the floor. Suddenly, a memory of him coming home and calling for Sabrina surfaces in his mind. His dirty shoes left tracks all over the floor. Howard perfectly understands his new boss's warning. She also advises him not to use the host's bathroom and suggests he go before the party. A memory of Sabrina scolding him for certain bathroom habits soon follows. Finally, Sandy warns him not to enter any other room in the mansion, especially Mr. Liu's bedroom, the memory of a moment in that room. She notices his discomfort and asks what's wrong, pointing out that he looks pale. Howard assures her he's fine, trying to hide it. Suddenly, Sandy's scream echoes, yelling for someone to stop him. A suspect appears running down the street, followed by a group of people. Howard watches the man jump a fence and keep running. On impulse, he snatches the bag from Sandy's hands. She stares at him, confused, and asks what he thinks he's doing. Sandy insists he'll never hit him, since the man is far away and there are important files in the bag. The fugitive keeps running down the street, getting farther away. As the man prepares to jump the next fence, Howard leans against the nearby railing. His perception of the environment suddenly changes, making everything sharper. With his eyes fixed on the target, he concentrates for the throw, visualizing both Sandy and the fugitive. The bag cuts through the air in a precise motion. The impact hits the man's back. He stumbles and falls, scattering the bag's papers and a purse on the ground. The man collides with the asphalt, immobilized by the fall. People capture the thief while the victim thanks them for their help. Howard and Sandy gather the scattered papers. He wonders if Sandy is mad at him for throwing her purse. Suddenly, she turns and calls his name. Howard faces her, waiting for her reaction. With a smile, Sandy says he was incredible. She praises him for stopping the thief and asks if he can teach her, while he's surprised by her sudden change in behavior. Sandy explains she had to act like a lady since it was their first date, but now she sees him as a hero. Then she asks where he learned that skill. Howard replies that it was nothing, but she insists it was impressive. The people around them approach to thank him, and Sandy suggests everyone help gather the belongings. Among the scattered papers, Howard finds a business card from Eggwheel Capital Limited in the name of Lawrence. He shows the card to Sandy, who confirms it belongs to a very important business partner of the company. She warns him not to show the card to anyone, as Mr. Lawrence is the head of one of the world's top 100 corporations. The name Lawrence sparks a sense of familiarity in Howard's mind. Sandy mentions that Miss Luo might be in a relationship with Mr. Lawrence and that the two are going on a cruise. Hearing this, Howard finally remembers something crucial. He recalls that in his dream, Sabrina mentioned her partner's name was Lawrence. Howard then urges her to finish gathering everything so they won't be late for the party. Sandy agrees and follows him. The two arrive at the mansion as the sunset paints the sky orange. Sandy says a colleague told her the party will be in the property's backyard. She looks at her phone and starts giving directions to the location, but Howard walks ahead and she warns him to slow down, saying he might get lost. He takes her hand and guides her along the path. When they arrive at the party, their colleagues ask why they took so long. Surprised, Sandy asks how he found the place so quickly, as if he already knew it. Howard stares at her in silence for a moment. Then, his eyes fix on Sabrina Luo, who is talking to a man in the middle of the party. Mr. Liu asks everyone to sit down, announcing the start of the marketing department meeting. Sandy approaches Howard, saying they'll sit together, but he warns her to behave, fearing people might misunderstand their relationship. While Sabrina Luo watches silently in the background, Sandy asks his age and if he's seeing anyone. Sabrina keeps her head down, avoiding any expression. Lawrence addresses the guests and explains that the company's new focus will be on e-commerce. Howard takes the opportunity to ask Sandy if Miss Luo also works in the marketing department. She confirms and reveals that the department was created under Sabrina's command. She also explains that her father is the company's president, which makes her much more influential than Mr. Liu himself. Surprised, Howard asks where Mr. Liu came from, assuming he must have powerful connections. Sandy says that he and Miss Luo grew up together and have been close since childhood. She adds that many people believe they would make a perfect couple. Howard then comments that everything seems confusing, questioning why Sabrina broke up with Lawrence. With a finger to her lips, Sandy asks him to be quiet, saying the rich have their own lifestyle. She admits to feeling admiration and curiosity about what it's like to live surrounded by business giants. Howard wishes her luck, but reflects that everything that happened in the dream must remain only in his imagination, as he has no chance with Sabrina. Lawrence ends the meeting and announces it's time for dinner. Classical music begins to play softly in the background. Sandy comments that the melody makes them feel like part of the elite. With an elegant gesture, Lawrence extends his hand to Sabrina and asks her to dance, recalling the last time they danced in high school. She accepts the invitation and smiles, saying that time really flies. Howard watches in silence without looking away. As a waiter serves the dishes, Sandy is impressed by the boss's generosity, while Howard wonders how much such expensive meat would cost. She scolds him for looking like a rookie and encourages him to relax, saying they should enjoy the night. He raises his glass, agreeing that a man needs to maintain his pride and dignity. The two toast, watching Lawrence and Sabrina dance in the background. A memory floods his mind. In the dream, he was worried when he realized the wine wasn't authentic, and she confirmed that the taste did seem different. He regretted choosing the wrong bottle, but she reassured him with a smile. With the glass in her hands, Sabrina said that to her, the wine was perfectly sweet. In the present, Sabrina discreetly glances over her shoulder towards the table where Howard is sitting. Watching what seems to be a harmonious couple, Howard notices how well Mr. Liu treats his employees. A nearby voice comments that Mr. Liu and Miss Luo grew up together, seeming made for each other. To him, Mr. Liu exudes confidence. He believes Sabrina will have a happy life with Lawrence. Convinced that perhaps this is for the best, he distractedly touches the hot plate. He immediately pulls his hand back, feeling the heat. Sandy calls him clumsy, reminding him that the boss had warned the food was freshly prepared. She tells him not to move, as she will take care of the injury herself. A little water is poured over his hand. Pouring more water from a bottle, Sandy says it's not serious and tells him to act like an adult. Howard just thanks her. Their co-workers congratulate the department's new couple, but he tries to explain it's not what it looks like. From a distance, Sabrina watches the scene. Lawrence notices the expression on her face. Three men approach, commenting that the two seem to be having a lot of fun. One of them explains he heard Miss Luo was moving to the marketing department and came to congratulate her, but now he wants to understand what's going on. Turning to the couple, he asks why Mr. Lawrence's partner is dancing with another man. From his own table, Howard wonders who that guy is. Sandy explains his name is Hans, the general manager of Igwil Capital, and that Lawrence holds him in high regard. Muttering, Howard comments that the situation is awkward and he doesn't know whose side to take. Lawrence asks Hans not to overreact, stating it's just a dance to liven up the party. Sabrina thanks him for being there, but points out that this is an internal company event. Hans is visibly surprised. She suggests he stop by her office the next day, but for now, it's best if he leaves. He insists there's no hurry. He says it's all a misunderstanding and that he can very well join the celebration. Turning to Sabrina, Hans asks her to dance. Lawrence stops him, starting to say something. He states that he and Sabrina are old friends and questions if it's appropriate to ask a woman he doesn't know to dance. Hans tells Liu not to worry about it and says it's none of his business to look after her. Lawrence is left speechless. Sandy comments that the tension is rising and fears it might end in a fight. At that moment, Sabrina intervenes, reminding Liu that Hans is a business partner, and the man praises her composure. Extending his hand, Hans invites her to dance. She stares at him for a moment before accepting. Back at the table, Sandy comments that the way he meddled is unpleasant. While they dance, Hans says he will be the one to pick her up to meet Lawrence. Sabrina just thanks him. He replies that the pleasure is all his and holds her inappropriately. Pushing him away, she tells him to keep his distance, and Hans apologizes. He promises not to do it again. Lawrence watches the two on the dance floor. Sandy comments that Mr. Liu must be furious, but can't do anything since his company is inferior to Lawrence's. Howard takes a sip of his drink, watching the scene intently. He leaves her disrespectfully. Immediately after, she warns him with a firm gesture. She says Hans doesn't seem to be a good dancer and suggests they stop, but he insists he's just getting started. Sandy says Mr. Liu is being too passive and tells Howard to stop staring. He grips his wine glass. Hans criticizes her for embarrassing him in front of everyone. In a sudden move, he throws her off balance, causing her to stumble backward. Lawrence turns towards him. Howard realizes he was wrong about Mr. Liu. A determined expression takes over his face. A stake flies through the air toward Hans. The piece of meat hits him right in the face. Screaming in pain, Hans yells that he's burned, while his colleagues run to help him and Sabrina remains on the floor. The guests react to Miss Luo's condition. Ordering silence, the man demands everyone stay still. Then he orders his two subordinates to find out who threw the stake. One of them approaches Howard's table. The subordinate gives him a suspicious look. He soon reports that he found nothing there. Howard discreetly gives thanks. He remembers that Sandy gave him half of her stake, which saved him from being discovered. She replies that it was nothing. She thinks he was very brave for doing something even Mr. Liu wouldn't dare to do. The other man also claims he found nothing and asks what they should do. Hans touches his own forehead, asking if the stake fell from the sky, and orders that no one leave until they find the culprit. In a quick gesture, Sabrina slaps him across the face. Hans falls to the floor and his men run to help him up. Holding her dress strap, she demands he take his men and leave, saying she can't stand him anymore. The guests watch in silence. Howard is surprised by Sabrina's ferocity, relieved she hadn't done that in his dream. As he's held back, Hans yells, asking how she dares to hit him. Lauren steps up beside her, saying that being polite doesn't give him the right to disrespect her, and threatens to call the police. One of the men tries to calm his boss, who just grumbles. Then, the subordinate whispers something in his ear. Hans says there's no need to call the police, says goodbye to Miss Luo, and leaves with his men. Lawrence questions the sudden exit, but Sabrina just says she's going to get changed. Howard watches the two walk away and thinks the party is finally over. The night, however, is still far from over. Turning to Sandy, he asks what's wrong. She asks him to call her by her first name and points to the table full of bottles, commenting that they ordered way too much to drink. She concludes that she's found a man more charming than Mr. Liu and decides she's going to win him over tonight. Howard tells her not to rush, blaming Hans for being a buzzkill, but admits he's not a good drinker. Despair washes over him as he remembers he only has $400 on his card and his salary only comes in next week. Realizing he's a tough nut to crack, she decides to prepare for the challenge. Sandy then proposes that for every 3 glasses she drinks, he must drink 1. Howard accepts the deal, determined to get her drunk as quickly as possible with less food and more beer. The clock strikes 1 in the morning. He tries to wake up Sandy, who is completely passed out. Holding her in his arms, he asks where she lives. Drunk, she suddenly stands up and yells that she lives in the far west desert. Immediately after, she lets out a belch. Howard warns her to be careful not to fall, but she loses her balance and collapses right on top of him. Yelling, he tells her to get off, saying it's inappropriate and everyone is watching. In response, she just kept coming forward. Without stopping, she keeps coming. Just then, a waiter informs them the restaurant is about to close and hands him the bill. Howard takes the small piece of paper. He stares at the total charge. The amount is exactly $400. Later, the two arrive at an apartment building. Howard helps her up a dark staircase and she asks where he's taking her. He replies that it's where he lives and she can spend the night there. Sandy calls him a naughty boy for bringing her home on the first day they met. Howard explains he can't afford a hotel and insists she tell him where she lives, but she refuses. From the shadows, the figure of a bearded man emerges in the darkness. Howard then lays her down on the bed. Lying down, she asks him to hold her. He just tells her to go to sleep. The worry of becoming the center of gossip in the new department torments him. Sandy says she's feeling sick and dizzy, but she needs to win him over before she passes out. Dragging herself across the bed, she tries to get closer. The girl sits on the edge. Turning to him, she asks what he wants now. Right after, she moves her face close to his. Howard asks what she's doing as she throws herself on him. Sandy replies that she's going to win him over first. Sitting up, she says she wants to see how long he can resist. He covers his mouth, exclaiming that this is exciting. Sandy leans back, commenting on how hot it is in there. Grabbing her wrist, Howard tells her to stop and warns that this will end in disaster. She says she understands since he must also be hot, but he denies it. Suddenly, the girl unfastens. Whispering in his ear, she tells him not to be afraid. Pushing him, she makes the situation different. Howard feels he's about to give in, but he suddenly starts to snore. Looking at her, he wonders if he fell asleep. Unexpectedly, Sandy belches a strong smell of beer in his face. Howard scrambles to the corner as she collapses onto the floor. Covering his mouth, he says the belch made him completely sober. Then he arranges Sandy on the bed and covers her with a sheet. Seeing it's already 2 in the morning, he decides to sleep on the sofa. The night moves on under the glow of the moon. The bedroom door opens slowly. Howard is still sleeping on the sofa. Suddenly, he wakes up. He sees a man entering the room. The figure approaches Sandy. He watches her for a moment and comments that she's beautiful. Confronting him, Howard asks what he's doing there and how he got in. Telling him to calm down, the man replies that he's had enough fun. Shocked, Howard retorts that this is absurd. As he yells for the intruder to get out, a hand grabs him from behind. The man throws him hard. Getting up, he comments that Howard is tough and that they could have talked peacefully. Approaching her, he says he owes him one and to let him know if he needs help in the future. Continuing, he promises to give him money when he gets rich and swears he hasn't touched a woman in 20 years. Holding the piece, he turns to Howard and states that, as men, they understand each other. Then, he throws the clothing in Howard's face. With his hand on his face, Howard calls him. Grabbing a stool, he tries to attack the intruder. The man, however, breaks the object with a single punch. Proclaiming it's a good deal, the intruder claims everyone would die for a favor from him. Sarcastically, Howard says he's the best, but reminds him the police can arrest him, making the man apprehensive. Howard accuses him of breaking into his house and trying to do something illegal. Grabbing him, the man comments that the situation seems strange. He asks if the girl isn't a woman, and Howard retorts, asking if she looks like one. Incredulous, the invader questions if people sleep together on the first day, and the young man demands an explanation. So he explains he was abroad for 20 years and doesn't know how dating works today. Doubting the excuse, Howard asks why he waited at the door instead of going home. Revealing the truth, the man says this was his apartment 20 years ago and he came back to get things he had hidden. Heading to a corner of the room, he states the items were hidden there. Showing a small box, he declares that no one found it in 20 years. Inside the box, he reveals jewelry, a watch, and pearls. Saying he risked his life for those items, he claims that back in the day, if they wanted his gold ring, they'd have to take it with their mouths. Howard states he doesn't care about his past and demands to know how he plans to compensate for having hurt his colleague. But the man insists it was all a misunderstanding. Introducing himself as Josh Tai, he guarantees he's not a bully, tells Howard to dress his colleague, and announces he's leaving. Even so, Howard says he should take him to the police, reminding him that soliciting services like that is a crime. Josh then threatens him, saying the girl could easily accuse him of being the real attacker. He then hands a small box to Howard, asking him to forget what happened. Howard refuses the bribe, but Josh explains the object has no material value. It's just an iron ring, though it's unique. He confesses that since the day he found it, he's dreamed repeatedly of the same woman. The woman in his dreams wore a red coat and held a golden scepter. Josh laments that she never accepted, questioning if she was a ghost haunting him. At that moment, Howard realizes the description exactly matches AI-63. As he leaves, Josh says Howard can do whatever he wants with the ring, or even sell it for a high price to the right kind of person. Still doubting, Howard asks if he really doesn't see that as a bribe. Without answering, Josh leaves and slams the door on his way out. With the box in his hands, Howard wonders if this is connected to the dream system and decides to open it. Inside the small box, a glistening ring appears. Suddenly, a signal is emitted from the ring's jewel. Soon, a projection rises from the object, leaving Howard surprised. The woman introduces herself as a developer of the dream system and explains she left a message to warn the participant. Directly, she informs him that he has fallen into a trap. Next, the developer explains that the system can erase the boundaries between social classes, laws, and moral standards. The user barely notices their mind changing little by little. Upon returning to real life, the difference between dream and reality awakens the greed and impulses sleeping in their soul. She says that the other developers are just toying with people's lives and that she failed to convince them to fix the system. The woman advises him to watch for the changes within himself and not let his impulses take control. She also reveals she left a communication device in each challenge to help him escape the problem, and asks him to find her. Right after, the projection dissipates and the ring emits a final signal. Howard notes the developer is identical to AI-63, but believes he's acting normally and won't commit any inappropriate acts. 2 decades ago, he saw AI-63, and now he wonders if the ring is the system's terminal. Suddenly, the cell phone on the bed starts to ring. The alarm indicates 7 in the morning. Grabbing the phone, Howard is startled to realize the day has already begun. Beside him, Sandy wakes up with a soft yawn. Sitting up in bed, Sandy runs her hand through her hair. Suddenly, a scream echoes through the building. Sometime later, Howard and Sandy are walking down the street arm in arm. A vendor comments that he now understands why he refused his offer, and because they find the couple so adorable, breakfast will be on the house. With a shy smile, Sandy says she didn't know Howard was interested in her and apologizes for not noticing sooner. In silence, he wonders why this is happening to him. Soon, the two arrive at the Grand Glory Limited building. They enter the office while their colleagues comment on the scene, laughing. 2 men recall that the former group leader was also interested in her and feel sorry for him. From the other side of the room, the former leader watches the scene, irritated at the sight of Howard. At that moment, the elevator reaches the first floor. As they get out, Sandy invites him to the movies, suggesting they pick a romantic film. Howard realizes he'll need to borrow money from Donald to pay for the date. The speed of events leaves him speechless. Just then, Sabrina approaches down the hallway. The couple greets her with a good morning. She comments amused that the two seem to have advanced quite a bit in their relationship. Sandy apologizes if they caused any embarrassment. Sabrina stares at him, surprised at how quickly he acted. The atmosphere of the moment drags him into a vortex of confusion. Soon, Sandy comments that he seemed like a reserved gentleman, which is why she felt so comfortable with him last night. Quickly, Howard covers her mouth and says she doesn't need to go into detail. Sabrina clenches her fist, containing her expression. Turning to the side for a moment, she takes a deep breath. Finally, she faces the couple and says she's happy for them, but asks them to maintain discretion in the office so as not to affect the others. Slowly backing away, Sabrina leaves them alone in the hallway. With an annoyed expression, Sandy comments that Miss Luo is the worst, questioning her right to lecture them on relationships. Howard disagrees, saying she's right and they should focus on work. Immediately, Sandy lets go of his arm. Scolding him, she reminds him she's his girlfriend now and expected him to defend her. Continuing, she states that he must support her without hesitation and asks if he's ever thought about starting a family with her. He just repeats the word family, confused. Right after, Howard agrees that she's right and admits he should put their relationship above all else. Sandy hugs him and says she'll wait for him on the ground floor after work. As she embraces him, she stares at him up close without looking away. He holds her hand, returning the gesture. Once inside the elevator, she comments that she wishes he were a little more decisive. The day moves on in the office. Lawrence approaches Sabrina and notes that she's working too hard. He insists, saying he doesn't believe she's so busy she can't even eat lunch. Sabrina replies that she's not hungry as there's too much to do in the new department. But Lawrence counters, saying that since they've been friends for years, he knows when she's lying. He then suggests the real reason is anxiety. He slaps his hand on her desk, getting her attention. Then he asks if Howard is the cause of this restlessness. Sabrina stares at him in silence. Then she calmly says she doesn't know what he's talking about. At that moment, there's a knock on the door. Howard enters and informs Mr. Liu that he's organized the list. Lawrence asks him to come closer to show his work. The woman watches the interaction between the two attentively. After reviewing the papers, Lawrence praises the clear layout and concise content. Howard steps away from the desk, feeling Sabrina's gaze on him. Soon, Lawrence asks why he's looking down and what he's thinking about. The young man replies that everything is fine and he was just looking at the potted plant. The small plant in the pot catches his attention. His heart starts to beat hard. Curious, Howard asks aloud if that's a tomato plant. The atmosphere in the office becomes tense, and the three of them stare at each other. Sabrina comments that he seems to know a lot about tomatoes. He confirms, saying he knows them by heart. Suddenly, memories from a dream surface. The fight for one last tomato to survive. She then asks him if he's seen plants like that somewhere else. Howard just answers yes. He hesitates for a moment before continuing. A memory of Mr. Wang appears, talking about men who delude themselves with women out of their reach. Then, the image of AI-63 appears, declaring the game is over. The developer's voice echoes, warning him to watch for the changes in himself and not be dominated by impulses. Soon, Sandy appears in his mind, reminding him she's his girlfriend now. Finally, the image of Sabrina in the snow envelops him as his heart races. He hesitates a moment before answering. Then he says he's seen tomato plants like that in his hometown. Lawrence comments that he expected a more shocking secret, but Howard replies that tomatoes don't hide secrets. Turning to Sabrina, the boss asks why she's growing them in the office. She lowers her gaze for a moment. A shadow covers part of her face. With a slight smile, Sabrina explains she must have planted the wrong seeds and promises to change the pot the next day. Lawrence asks if that's all, and Howard confirms it is. Later, the sound of a faucet echoes in the bathroom. Howard splashes water on his face, trying to compose himself. He feels relieved to realize the real Sabrina is different from the one in the dream, but wonders why he still can't get her out of his head. In her office, Sabrina works alone, focused at her desk. She breathes a sigh of relief for having maintained her composure and avoided embarrassment. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Howard realizes the game's developer was right and that he had been caught in a trap without noticing. Looking at his own reflection, he wonders what kind of man he would have become if he had stayed in the game. He then remembers he's just an employee, and she's the president's daughter, concluding that nothing will ever happen between them. Back in her office, Sabrina thinks about how real the dream seemed in the 180 days they spent facing trials together. Holding the pot with the small plant, she decides it's time to leave the past behind. They both reach the same conclusion. The dream is over, and they are no longer connected to each other. The workday finally comes to an end at Grand Glory Limited. Howard asks Donald for help, who transfers $2,000 and comments that his expenses have increased since he got a girlfriend. Outside the building, Sandy is waiting for him. Howard decides to take her to dinner, wanting to cheer her up. Suddenly, the former group leader approaches to talk to her. He says he's worried Sandy might be getting scammed, but she replies that she doesn't need to hear it. Howard arrives and hugs her, asking what happened. He wants to know if the man tried to bother her, but she denies it. The ex-leader states that, unlike certain people, he's honest and just wanted to warn her to stay away from hypocrites. After saying what he wanted, he turns and walks away. Howard tells her to just ignore him, reminding her that he was always a nuisance in the advertising department. Holding her hand, Howard reminds her they were still going to the movies and shopping. Her hand slowly slips from his. The two remain side by side, watching the sunset paint the sky. Suddenly, Sandy announces she wants to break up. He continues to look at the horizon without turning to face her. She says they barely know each other and asks about his family's debt. Howard lowers his head, silent. With a faint smile, he replies that the amount is $200,000. The amount stuns her, too large for someone living just on their own salary. He then asks her to leave him out of it. Sandy confesses she doesn't come from a rich family and isn't as capable as he thinks. Howard admits he knows she was never really interested in him. She explains that she didn't like seeing Miss Luo attract all the good men, and that without realizing it, she ended up getting involved. Finally, she says she doesn't deserve him and asks him to forget last night. After speaking, Sandy walks away and leaves, leaving him alone in front of the building. Later, in a text exchange, Howard refuses Donald's offer of more money. Approaching Sion's desk, Mr. Liu starts a conversation. He informs her that the matter involves Chen Shu and continues speaking. He explains that he gave the young man a week's worth of work, noting it was all completed in a single day with excellent results. Admitting he misjudged her, he acknowledges she was merely testing Chen Shu's extraordinary talent. Listening in silence, Sion maintains a firm expression. Questioning the idea of a complicated relationship, she warns the manager not to act like he knows her, reminding him she has replaced secretaries for less. Appearing at the door, Sandy Dai informs manager Liu that his driver is waiting, and he confirms he's on his way. Watching the secretary, Zian thinks that woman has no good intentions. As he turns to leave, Mr. Liu reminds her of their agreement not to interfere in each other's personal matters. Elsewhere, Howard Chen scolds himself, regretting he let himself be swayed by the words he heard. He gets a call with an offer to make quick money and asks if it's for real. Introducing her friends, Sandy Dai explains they will help with the live stream, aiming to do something unprecedented. Howard Chen finds it strange and questions why they are dressed that way. Explaining that streams need visual effects to attract an audience, they hear him ask if he also needs to wear clothes like that. Confirming he must wear the prepared clothes, one of the women states that his job will be to shoot arrows. Announcing they've already reached 200,000 fans, Sandy Dai comments on that night's earnings. Hearing that the amount depends on his skills, Howard Chen agrees to do his best. Approaching the group, one of the women asks Zixin why she's using that person. Explaining that the club's style is to get the fans excited, Zixin listens as Sandy Dai suggests they try something different this time. Intervening firmly, another woman reminds them that the stream isn't just for them and that making money off of foolishness isn't fun. Proposing they go to extremes to gain popularity, she argues that Howard knows nothing and they have nothing to lose. Listening to the group's conversation, Howard Chen remains attentive. Approaching slowly, someone appears wearing a boot with spiky details. Looking forward, the three women keep their attention fixed. Putting on the new outfit, he comments that if his mother saw him, she certainly wouldn't approve. Commenting that the effect is incredible and will boost the audience, Zixin asks about the mask. Answering that he would be a little embarrassed, the other woman smiles. Explaining he just doesn't want to be recognized by people in his daily life, he adjusts the mask. Turning to Howard Chen, Sandy Dai informs him the game has changed and that she needs to add some parts for him to do later. Stating to everyone that the audience will have more fun with a performance than just watching him shoot arrows, the other woman reinforces that this is a job. Preparing for the stream, Sandy Dai and Howard Chen take a deep breath together. Reassuring the young man, she says she'll help him however she can, and that he just needs to act his part as much as possible. Agreeing, Howard Chen asks them to start. Starting the recording on a phone, someone raises their arm. Welcoming everyone, the two women announce they will show something new this time. Revealing that a challenge has been created, one of them lifts her chin. She gestures and explains that the challenge is to shoot an arrow right into the middle of the mat. Pointing to the target, the woman warns that if the arrow misses, an alarm will sound, ending the challenge. Suggesting they demonstrate the alarm system, she prepares the test. Shooting wide of the target, Zixin misses the shot on purpose and the alarm sounds instantly, showing what will happen. Announcing it's time to introduce the rookie challenger, the other woman gestures to the camera. Stepping into the scene, Howard Chen appears before the audience. Holding 10 arrows, he prepares for the challenge. Encouraging the audience, the hosts ask them to send gifts to support him during the stream. Celebrating the audience growth, Sandy Dai decides she needs to lower the difficulty level. Being stopped, the other woman grips her wrist firmly. Questioning what she intends to do in a studio that underestimates its audience, the woman applies more pressure. Replying that it might embarrass Howard Chen, Sandy Dai is asked if she wants the audience to drop because of it. Shouting that the paying viewers don't want a show without challenges, the woman loses her patience. Turning to Howard Chen, she tells him not to think he can earn money without effort. Warning that he should quit if he doesn't want to participate, she states he shouldn't have started in the first place. Launching an arrow toward the target, Howard Chen begins the test. Hitting the bullseye perfectly, he demonstrates his skill. Turning around, he asks who said he didn't want to do it. Staring at him firmly, the woman says she wants something different. Announcing the challenger had a great start, she declares she will increase the challenge's distance. Trying to intervene, Sandy Dai explains that the International Championship uses a distance of only 2 meters, but Yao Pang shouts that it's her show. Pointing at Howard Chen, Yao Pang asserts that he did it on his own. Firing 3 arrows at once, he hits them all in the center of the target. Observing the result, Yao Pang declares that he is incredible. Reaffirming her surprise, she comments again as another arrow hits the target. Noticing the significant increase in viewers, the two women exchange glances. Praising his composure, the stream calls him the definition of a real man. Realizing she needs to do something, Xiao Pang notes that he keeps hitting the target perfectly. Announcing to the audience that he has already made 6 consecutive shots from twice the championship distance, she tries to regain control. Moving even farther away, he backs up as she yells that the distance keeps increasing. Celebrating the 6th consecutive hit, the woman raises her arms for the cameras. Informing them that the audience is growing and going viral, Zixin makes the mood tense. Yelling for them to do it again, Yao Pang demands they continue. She announces the 7th hit on the target with forced enthusiasm. Reaching the door, the challenger realizes he can't go any farther. Asking the audience if he will open the door to continue, Xiao Pang tries to keep the momentum going. Falling to the floor, the arrows finally end the streak. Turning to Howard Chen, Xiao Pang asks why he's dropping the arrows. Explaining that the studio expected his performance to fail, he says he doesn't like to act and that his last 3 shots should be considered misses. Questioning why people enjoy the failure of others instead of celebrating success, he faces the cameras. Concluding that perhaps he's not cut out for this business, he says goodbye to his current look and to any future live streams. Turning around, Howard Chen walks through the door and leaves the studio. Commenting that it's over and it'll be hard to find something so viral again, Zixin asks if the sudden disappearance of comments is a bug. Xiao Pang apologizes, realizing he blamed her for her attitude before the broadcast. Looking at their phones, Zixin and Sandy Dae wonder why that happened. In his room, Howard Chen answers the phone and asks who is calling. Wondering if he'd been found out after receiving the call, Howard Chen tries to calm down. Reflecting on his appearance last night, he considers it was all just for effect. Getting up, he finds breakfast on the table, black rice porridge, and other side dishes. Explaining that it's his favorite dish and that more food is coming, the older man adjusts the tray. Commenting that, at this rate, he'll earn the nickname Black Food Bro, Howard laughs at the unappealing dishes. Surprised by the reaction, the man hears the young man say they don't need to open a restaurant so soon, since the plan was for 2 days from now. Clarifying that he's still thinking about it, Howard asks the man to stay at his place for now. He emphasizes that he can eat and sleep there, stating it's better than wandering around. Later, approaching the company building, Howard Chen takes a deep breath. Surprised at the entrance, he finds the 3 women from the live stream greeting him. Asking to talk for a moment, they insist, but he refuses, saying he has work and says goodbye. Running away, he thinks he should have stayed home if he'd known they would be there. In the office, a colleague urgently calls him, informing him that Mr. Liu wants to see him immediately. Showing his phone, he explains that Shishiro has gone viral and that President Liu is very interested in him. Displaying images from the previous night's stream, the device reveals the whole situation. Realizing his appearance instantly became famous on Keelang's website, Howard Chen turns pale. The colleague explains that the site got famous because of the 7 hits, seeing the young man's despair. Entering Director Liu's office, Howard asks if the man was looking for him and has his path blocked. Questioning him about the stream, Mr. Liu wants to know why he didn't see him on camera with Dai Zixin. The director approaches while praising Keelang's site, making Howard back away. He demands the contact number for that person for a collaboration, pressing further but gets a firm response. Denying he has the contact and stating he finds that appearance unpleasant, Howard tries to end the subject. Replying that he doesn't seem to have good taste, Mr. Liu comments that Keelang has become an idol to the public. He describes the image of a cold, solitary figure, speaking of a firm stance, and the words about the last 3 throws that left everyone trembling. Insisting he get the contact number, the director claims that's how the world works, but Howard says he's not responsible for it. Offering him a promotion to assistant, Mr. Liu promises a salary increase and benefits. Promising to find the person, Howard thinks that being Keelang was great since he only had to show up without revealing his face. Sitting elsewhere, Zixin says that Chen Shu finally dislikes them, and that it's better if they don't do that for now. Arriving with Howard, Sandy Dai announces that he has something to say. Rushing towards them, Xiao Pang loses control. She grabs Howard Chen's tie and stares at him. Shouting that she didn't want to be like this, Xiao Pang admits that since no one watched her workout videos, she had the idea to change her approach to get attention. Hearing this, Zixin says his words made her realize her initial intention was just to show how hard it is to make money, but everything changed. Clasping her hands, she begins to plead. On her knees, Xiao Pang promises not to do it anymore to avoid further embarrassment, but asks for help to make money. Shaking her hand, Howard Chen accepts the request. Agreeing to do it, he leaves the 3 women satisfied. A month later, a notice on the screen announces that the Dream Games will open tomorrow. Questioning the early opening, Howard Chen admits he no longer feels drawn to it. Getting ready, he dresses as Keelang again. Acclaimed by a crowd on stage, Keelang declares that living in the real world isn't all that interesting. Greeting the fans on stage, Keelang asks who hasn't eaten yet, prompting a man in the audience to raise his hand. Holding a small cake, Sandy Dai asks what they will give him. Offering to handle it, she says she'll buy a cake for the fan. The audience immediately explodes with enthusiasm. Flying straight ahead, the cake hits the man in the face. Approaching, T. Lang asks if he accepts the gift and if it's good. With his face still covered in cake, the fan stands motionless while another man beside him watches. Shouting in support, the man with the dirty face and the rest of the crowd begin to cheer for T. Lang. In the audience, Ziyun comments that this is strange and she doesn't understand what's so great about it. Sitting next to her, Mr. Liu explains that all this passion is a way to make money. Announcing the next part, Xiao Pang states that the event will also toss a red scarf to make someone T. Lang's honored partner. Leaping from his seat, Mr. Liu shouts to be chosen, but Ziyun pulls him back, telling him not to overdo it. Flying through the air, the red scarf lands on her head. Seeing Jiayun covered by the scarf, the men around her stop, and someone asks who wants it. A widespread scramble begins as the men try to grab the scarf from her. Celebrating his victory, Mr. Liu holds up the scarf, while Jiayun insists she doesn't like Qi Lang. Backstage, Mr. Liu comments that Chen Shu went to the bathroom and still hasn't returned, but Keelang says he has already been instructed on what to do. Holding the scarf, Mr. Liu claims the object hit him on the head, and Keelang asks if that's true. Explaining his position, Qilang says he doesn't plan to sign a contract, but he is open to evaluating proposals for the use of his image. Watching silently, Xian notices her boss's confused expression. Reflecting on the situation, Howard Chen thinks that Mr. Liu doesn't seem like a kind-hearted person. Another man approaches, suggesting that since he's famous, Qilang should choose the Jian Feng group. But rejecting the offer, Qilang listens as the man claims he doesn't seem to know the group yet. Asking how much Mr. Liu offered, he promises to multiply the proposal by 5. Observing the scene, Xian thinks about the Jian Feng group's strategy of making high bids to secure larger profits. Clarifying his stance, Qilang tells Chief Zhu that his refusal isn't about money, leaving the man confused. He states bluntly that it's because he doesn't like him. Left speechless, the man stands frozen, while Mr. Liu and Xian try not to laugh. As Qilang leaves, he hears Chief Zhu shout that he will regret it, and Mr. Liu comments that the artist is quite interesting. Agreeing silently, Xian admits that her impression of him seems to have changed. The older man asks Howard Chen if he really has the money to start the business. Sitting on the sofa, he hears that he needs to pay 3 months' rent as soon as he gets the money, but Howard reassures him. Showing a card, Howard states that it should be enough. Explaining the origin of the money, he says his family started saving money on that card since he was 1 year old. Despite hardships, his parents insisted on saving for him until he turned 18. Remembering the scene, he recalls his father handing him the card and telling him to find his own way in life. Stating that the money means a lot to him, he guarantees that his decision to open a restaurant has not changed. Asking about the situation, he wants to know if the man is ready. Responding firmly, he says he can't do it, leaving Howard surprised. Regretfully, he explains that it's too late as he has already found a new job. Far away, Chief Zhu discovers from a photo that Qilang is actually Chen Shu. Demanding immediate action, he orders Damao to call one of his contacts. One of the men casually comments that he recently gave him an advance to handle a sensitive matter. Observing the image of Chen Shu and Sandy Dai, Chief Zhu analyzes it in silence. Declaring his conclusion, he states that this is what happens when they try to cross him. As he sinks into the water, Howard's consciousness fades away among the bubbles. Drifting toward the bottom, weakened, Howard Chen wonders if this is the end. Rewinding 15 hours before the incident, the scene focuses on Howard Chen. Suddenly, an elderly woman appears at the door. From the car, a voice calls out to him, asking what he's waiting for. Getting into the vehicle, he apologizes and explains that an old woman knocked on his door looking for someone. Mr. Liu asks if he knew the person the woman was looking for. Calmly, Howard Chen explains it was a friend from the boarding house who had moved out the previous night. Mr. Liu suggests he move closer to the company, but Howard says he'll think about it. Mr. Liu thanks him for promising a meeting. He adds that while production wasn't as expected, he was happy to see Mr. Zhao Hao's reaction. He introduces his team, his driver and secretary, whom Howard Chen will be seeing frequently. The two in the front seat greet him immediately. Returning the gesture, Howard Chen asks for everyone's cooperation in the future. Mr. Liu warns him that he'll often face tough and shrewd clients. He explains that success will come once he earns their trust. Holding a cat, a woman asks if there are any complaints. The other women in the room remain silent. Mr. Liu and Howard Chen arrive, and Mr. Liu apologizes for the delay. Sandy Dai turns at once, calling Howard Chen's name. Another woman challenges them, asking Mr. Liu why Howard Chen is in the room. He explains that he forgot to mention Howard would be his new assistant and prepares for the introduction. Making a formal introduction, Mr. Liu introduces him to Jiangxia, the CEO of the Fangdong Group. Howard Chen extends his hand to greet Ms. Jiangxia. Frozen, he watches the scene, unsure how to react. Asking the cat if it's hungry, Jiangxia completely ignores the two men. She ends the conversation saying they should stop talking business during their break. Walking away calmly, she states she can't wait to get into the hot spring, leaving Howard Chen confused. Mr. Liu tells him to relax, explaining that's just how she is. He lays out the situation. The Fangdong Group has China's largest e-commerce platform, but artificially inflating their market price would destroy them. He adds that Xi'an, his betting headquarters, can pull it off, which is why they're short on time. He states the risk clearly. If the company's profitability doesn't meet this week's target, he's afraid they'll never see her again. The word bet catches his attention, making Howard Chen think. In her room, Sabrina Luo says she did it to break free from the ties that forced the little girl to walk the red tightrope, but that she can't choose. A man passing by the office makes a casual remark. Silently, Howard Chen wonders if this is the bet Sabrina Luo is making for her position and what the red thread signifies. Mr. Liu tells Sabrina Luo they need to speak with Ms. Jiangxia again, but she asks what else there is to discuss. Jiangxia says she has a request that she hopes will solve the problem. Explaining that only her group can promote products quickly across the country, Mr. Liu reminds them that there are only 3 days left for the bet. Dismissing her assistant, Sabrina Luo tells them they can go back to their room. Approaching the group, a man appears before them. Commenting that the farewell party seems festive, he assures them he will take Ms. Luo safely to Dufeng. Howard Chen watches the scene, studying the visitor. Mr. Liu demands to know why the deadline was moved up by 3 days. The man reveals that Sabrina Luo's father never informed them. He reveals that she is to meet Chief Dufeng tomorrow to discuss marriage and a partnership, making the atmosphere tense. Sabrina Luo decides to postpone the discussion until the next day, using the team's vacation as an excuse. Howard Chen struggles to understand the logic, wondering how a marriage could be part of a deal. Accusing him of lying, Mr. Liu states that everyone knew the Laoshi Group's finances were in jeopardy. Concluding that the parent company faces an even more serious problem, Howard Chen decides to analyze the data he has. Betting on the power of intelligence to prove her worth to her father, Sabrina Luo risks it all. If she fails this bet, she'll have to marry Dufeng to save the company. Howard Chen questions this since she's never even met the man. In disbelief, Mr. Liu says he's going to call and confirm. Sabrina Luo stops him, saying it's useless. Her father has always been like this, and she already knew. Repeating to herself that he was always this way, she tries to process the moment. A memory surfaces, a little girl behind bars. This has become her reason for living. The scene shows a masked man, free to control his own destiny, revealing the power behind the figure. Sitting outside the place where the girl is contained, the man with his second mask on the back of his neck watches in silence. Mr. Liu tells Howard Chen to go back to his room and wait, explaining that Sabrina needs some rest. The other man laughs scornfully as they walk away. He says that now she's forced to marry Mr. Dufeng, and that it's about time she helped out the old man. Turning to Howard, he comments that a woman like her really deserves this kind of treatment. The man advises him to worry about himself and deal with his own mess. Howard Chen gets a call. He answers, asking what happened. The caller informs him that they were confronted by a powerful group and have been labeled an adversary organization. A woman in an office warns not to involve the authorities, saying it could jeopardize the caller's career. Howard ends the call with a thank you. He's told that he will meet Zixin to discuss precautions. As the man points at him, he feels the tension rise. Calling him T-Lang, the man says that was just an appetizer. The man turns and warns him of the consequences of confronting him. Sitting alone by the pool, Howard Chen tries to figure out what to do. He reflects that Mr. Zhao now knows he is Qi Lang and wonders what kind of revenge he'll seek. With no instructions from the studio, he realizes that both CEO Liu and director Luo are dealing with their own problems. Memories of Sabrina Luo and Mr. Zhao flood his mind, filling him with unease. Concluding he can't count on Chief Liu, Howard decides his only help will come from CEO Jiang Xia. Turning, he sees a hooded figure approaching. He asks Linkle why he's there, trying to understand this new threat. The man makes his purpose clear. He was paid to neutralize a specific target. The man prepares for a fight. He apologizes to Howard Chen and announces his decision. Back to the opening scene, Howard sinks into the water, accepting his fate. A hand reaches into the water for him, and the narrative tone shifts. A message announces that the character has been created, redefining everything around him. Welcome to the second dream. Beast Invasion, an AI voice, AI-63, greets him. Howard Chen questions AI-63, asking why he's still alive and what he's doing here as he tries to make sense of the situation. She explains that players don't enter the game's program if they're defeated and asks if he's having problems in the real world. As a recent memory surfaces, Howard relives the event. A hooded man tells him he'll be spared this time, but that he needs to go to the hospital to recover. Lying on the ground, Howard is warned that if he doesn't leave the city, his colleagues, friends, and family will be in danger. Wondering why he faces so many obstacles on his path to success, he feels the weight of it all. Stared down by the hooded man, he realizes the gravity of the warning. Back in the room, Howard stands before a large door. Stating there's no going back, he says he'll get in some practice while he rests. AI-63 warns that Beast Attack is extremely difficult and he'll be defeated without the provided items. She tries to convince him, but Howard says he doesn't need them. He declares his intention to practice his fighting skills in the dream game, this time seeking a new strategy. He steals his resolve, declaring that if they want to interfere in his life, they will face the consequences. Walking towards the door, he accepts the challenge. The system initiates the virtual dream game, Beast Attack. As soldiers, players must survive, explore, fight, and escape. They have 160 days before destruction. Questioning the game's difficulty, Howard notices he received a vest and a gun. Feeling a drip on his helmet, he realizes something is wrong. Looking up, he senses the danger above. A giant monster dominates the scene, viciously attacking something. Turning to face him from above, the creature fixes him with its predatory eyes. A piece of debris lands near his foot, hitting the ground. Facing the creature, Howard gauges the distance. The monster throws a punch, but he dodges and calls it King Kong. He runs into a building, escaping just as the creature's fist demolishes the wall. The wall crumbles behind him, revealing the beast's immense strength. Reaching for his gun, Howard questions whether he should use it. Realizing the creature isn't easy to take down and remembering the man who attacked him is a dangerous adversary, he hesitates. He abandons the idea of the gun as the monster approaches from outside, deciding to face the challenge another way. The creature charges toward him, closing the distance between them. Grabbing a metal pipe from the rubble, Howard reacts instinctively. He plants the pipe firmly on the ground, bracing for impact. The monster appears at the entrance, causing massive damage as it takes over the area. Commenting that he was almost hit, he tries to catch his breath. The pipe moves quickly, gaining speed. It pierces through the wall and strikes the creature in a weak spot. Hitting its target, the tip embeds itself in the creature. The beast staggers back from the blow, trying to stay on its feet. Thrown into the distance, it loses control of its own body. Watching the scene unfold, Howard tries to understand what just happened. Leaning on the debris, he regains his balance. He concludes that his fighting power will grow slowly and accepts the game's progression. The sound of boots stepping on the ground in front of him shatters his thoughts. He quickly grabs a metal rod. He lunges forward to attack, trying to take the initiative. A woman appears before him, surprising him and making him question her identity. Recognizing her, Howard calls out Yang Jiangxia's name. Realizing something is off, he hesitates for a moment. The rod flies through the air as she falls to the ground, dodging the attack. Howard Chen approaches, asking if Jiangxia is okay. He tells her he thought he saw a monster. She questions what he's doing there, stating he should be in the hospital. Confused, Howard asks why. Jiangxia recalls what happened, explaining that he stumbled into her room injured, fell into the hot spring, and she called an ambulance for him. Howard connects the dots, realizing that after getting hurt, he must have mistakenly entered her room looking for help. He reflects that, in real life, he should be sleeping in a hospital bed, trying to make sense of it all. He states that when he woke up, he found himself in the ruins and doesn't understand how he got there, adding that he didn't choose to start a game or ask for an assistant. Jiangxia reveals she's in the same situation, explaining she was transferred to this place for no reason and came to see what was going on. Howard thanks her for calling the ambulance, saying he wouldn't have survived without her help. She tells him to save his words for when they've survived, adding that since he's good at throwing javelins, he can help her. Howard hesitates, asking how he could help. Jiangxia points to a sinking city in the distance, drawing his focus there. She asks if the city looks familiar, observing his reaction. Looking at the city in surprise, Howard tries to recognize the scene. He sees their company building amid the ruins and understands. Jiangxia confirms it, speculating they've traveled 300 to 400 years into the future. She observes that the wind carries a foul smell, the water looks caustic, and the sea level is steadily rising, pointing out that the land could soon be flooded. Realizing this is the ruin of the world, Howard feels the impact of the revelation. Jiangxia tries to offer some good news, saying they aren't the only humans there. But Howard interrupts with the bad news. There are monsters, and he saw gorillas attacking people. She asks if he wants to work with her, proposing to be the guide while he provides protection. Howard expresses his surprise, questioning how she isn't disturbed by the time travel and is already making plans. She simply replies that she just wants to survive, ending the discussion. Walking together through a sandy desert, the two advance across the arid terrain. Jiangxia asks if Howard was a javelin athlete, and he says no, explaining it's just a hobby. Howard remarks that he didn't expect her to remember his name since she barely looked at him when they first met. As they climb a mountain, she explains that he wasn't very valuable to her back then. He replies that she won't make any friends if she keeps calculating people's worth like that. Reaching the top, Howard comments that she's good at climbing. They spot a structure in the distance that looks like a fortress. Turning to him, Jiangxia states that you only make friends after you have enough value of your own. Suddenly, Howard pulls her back and covers her mouth with his hand, reacting to a nearby danger. Hidden, they watch a giant centipede crawl past them. Taking a gun from his pocket, Howard Chen makes a decision. Handing the gun to Jiangxia, he says it might be a letdown, but she should use it to protect herself if danger arises. Thanking him, she accepts the weapon and says she will help him when there's danger. Peeking around the fortress wall, Howard says there are no monsters nearby so they can go in. Inside, he finds it strange that the floor and building are clean, but no one is around. Looking at something, Howard asks what it is. Seeing a structure that looks like a military fortress, they approach cautiously. Jiangxia comments that the logs on the roof look like an eagle's nest, but observes that no eagle's nest could be so large. A flying creature appears in the sky before them. Howard shouts for her to get back, trying to warn his companion. A giant eagle soars towards them, violently taking to the sky. A giant eagle circles powerfully above the fortress. Jiangxia urgently tells him to hide in the house. Standing his ground, Howard doesn't react, and she calls out his name. He tells her to worry about herself, insisting he'll be fine. Grabbing a dart, he faces Jiangxia's reaction. She calls him crazy, insisting the eagle is huge and the darts won't stop it. Declaring this is exactly what he wants, he stays focused. A memory surfaces, a blade pointed right at him. A hooded figure remarks that he can't fight, just tremble before the threat. The man mocks his words about changing his own destiny, claiming anyone could beat him effortlessly. The figure then announces that Howard will not be his boss. Returning to the present, he thinks that when the dream ends, only the most vivid memory will remain, hoping it will be about how fearless and brave he could be. He readies himself for the attack. Getting into position, he prepares to throw the darts at the advancing eagle. Stared down by the giant creature from above, he holds his aim steady. He hurls multiple darts, sending them flying toward the bird. The projectiles hit the creature squarely, striking it with precision. Plummeting from the sky, the eagle crashes to the ground as Jiangxia watches it fall. A liquid from the creature splashes onto Howard. The liquid reacts immediately, starting to evaporate on his skin. Falling to his knees, he asks what this green substance affecting him is. Rushing to his side, Jiangxia warns him not to touch the liquid, stating that it's caustic. Howard screams as the substance continues to burn him. A light on a nearby structure changes color, triggering a gate to open. Appearing from the gap, a small robot announces it has detected a human in need of help and activates its emergency medical system. The machine prepares an injection while Jiangxia asks who it is. The robot injects the substance into Howard's back, completing the procedure. Writhing on the ground, Howard hears a warning that the system will shut down due to a lack of electricity. The robot shuts down completely, becoming motionless. Howard collapses as Jiangxia calls his name. Inside a room, Jiangxia stays by the unconscious Howard and the inactive machine. Turning to her companion, she comments that he's as good as new. Waking up confused, Howard asks where he is and notices his hair feels strange. Jiangxia attributes it to a side effect of the injection. Explaining they're in the fortress, she tells him the robot injected him with a potion that miraculously healed him completely. Jiangxia watches the machine, suggesting that maybe the robot can explain the history of this place when it wakes up. Reactivating completely, the robot announces it is fully charged and that a large dirty area has been detected. The machine moves across the room as Howard asks where it's going. The robot opens its top lid, revealing a new compartment. After that, it begins to spray the fallen creature. Howard asks if the robot is going to clean up the creature's remains, and Jiangxia guesses they need a code to activate it. Noticing the number 2003 on the metal casing, Jiangxia takes note of the detail. Saying the number out loud, she sees the robot turn towards her. Announcing it has received a new order, the machine deactivates its autopilot mode and initiates its smart program. Displaying its reports informs them it spent 1,130 days on autopilot, suffered 363 attacks, and cleaned 46,200 tons of garbage, now requiring maintenance. Watching the scene, Howard and Jiangxia see the robot's eye light up. The robot starts to dance, declaring it knew this day would come and that it was left behind for not working hard enough. It believes that if it keeps cleaning the camp, the humans will finally come back. Jiangxia asks the robot if this means there are no humans here. She questions the machine, asking if the place is tidy because it cleans every day. The robot confirms its routine, saying that one day the humans will return when they see how clean everything is, just like before. For a moment, the two stand in silence, just observing their surroundings. Jiangxia asks again, trying to find out if the machine knows where the humans went or if they left any message. The robot explains what happened, stating they said if they didn't return in a year, it meant they had gone to heaven. It asks with curiosity where heaven is, since it couldn't find it on the map. Howard advises that it's better if the robot doesn't know. Jiangxia concludes that since the robot has been on autopilot for 3 years, the people are likely gone for good. She instructs the machine to take them to the storage room, as it's time to make new plans. Entering the room, Jiangxia walks ahead while Howard watches her. He reflects on how she manages to stay calm and start planning again, even after so much trouble. Showing what's left, the robot displays the humans' weapons but informs them there's no ammunition. Pointing to a corner, it also indicates the compressed energy bars, the only remaining food, which the humans said were extremely hard. Revealing one more item, the machine shows them the Tears of Medusa potion, used to heal wounds, but it causes the body to rust if overused. Pointing at himself, Howard asks if that's what the robot injected him with, and if he's going to turn into a rock. The robot calmly informs him that he is safe, as the potion's effect is strong, and his hair grew due to excessive maintenance. Explaining another limitation, the machine says the potion doesn't repair the nervous system, and that some humans became disabled from relying on it too much. Howard laments that the potion won't turn him into a martial arts master. The robot informs them the camp has a reservoir, prompting Jiangxia to ask for a bathroom. Jiangxia questions its routine, asking why it didn't recharge at the power center. The robot replies that without permission, it cannot use human resources. Stating that a machine is just a machine, she asks it to show them the other areas. The robot remains silent for a moment, not reacting. It leads her forward into a control room with a large panel. Looking at the panel, she asks what kind of language that is, saying it looks like scribbles to her. The robot hurries over, announcing it has brought the map for the master. Tripping on a scroll on the floor, it loses its balance. Falling to the floor, the machine watches the scroll fly through the air. Jiangxia asks if it's still working, and what's written in the journal. The robot explains it's a new language created so intelligent animals could understand the stories. Admitting its limitation, the machine says the language wasn't registered in its system, so it can't read the records. Picking up the journal, Jiangxia reads and her expression changes. She questions their situation, asking if they are on an isolated island. But the map reveals this is the only landmass left on the planet. The robot adds that in 179 days, the land will be flooded by an acid ocean, and to stay safe, they must remain in the shelter. Summing it all up, Jiangxia concludes they have no ammo, no food, and no rescue. All that's left is to wait for the end. Sighing, she faces reality. Tying her hair back, she asks if the humans left any clothes she could bring to Howard. Confirming there are clothes in the rooms, the machine offers to get them. Jiangxia questions it one more time, asking the robot if it knows why the humans abandoned it. It asks hesitantly if it was because it didn't work hard enough. Standing over the fallen robot, she looks down at it. Coldly, Jiangxia explains it was because it failed to show how valuable it was, and she declares that she doesn't want to end up like it. The robot heads down the corridor alone. Howard finds the machine on the bathroom floor and asks what happened. It begs not to be left behind. Trying to clean the floor, the robot insists it can still work and clean. It tells the truth, stating that it wants to stay with the humans. Showing an image on its screen, it recalls how much it misses the time spent with people. Revealing other memories, it displays happy moments with children and nature on its viewer. On its screen, the machine relives a memory of 2 children cheering for it as it repeated its cleaning command. Failing slowly, its vision begins to distort, showing blurred images of the fortress. Wiping itself with a cloth, it pleads that it can still work. Affirming its hope, it says it doesn't know what heaven is like, but it will try to make this place cleaner than heaven itself. Adjusting one of the robot's parts, Howard examines the condition of the metal. Noting the wear, he asks how the robots were repaired, and the machine replies that there were human engineers in the maintenance room. Realizing there are no engineers, he decides to try anyway and approaches the door. As he enters the room, Jiangxia appears before him, and Howard asks why she came in. Telling him not to be shy, she says the world is about to be destroyed and hands him some new clothes she prepared. Thanking her, he asks her to put the clothes on the table. Stressing the gravity of the situation, Jiangxia says they are in very bad shape, but she assures him they still have a chance to survive. Questioning the past, she asks why humans would leave a shelter with food and a roof over their heads, even at the risk of being killed. Answering honestly, Howard says that Robot 2003 told him they were looking for some place. Pondering this, she says the world will soon collapse, and wherever they were going, they couldn't stop it unless there was something more. Listening intently, he hangs on her every word. Unless the place they were looking for could protect them from the immense destruction that was coming. Agreeing with this idea, Jiangxia states that only such a place would be worth the effort, even if it meant dying on the way. Stating that there must be useful information in the records, she says she needs time to decipher the codes, leaving Howard surprised by her determination. Looking at the map, Jiangxia comments that the sea level is rising and that the monsters will continue to gather, putting them in danger. Expressing her hope, she says they can continue working as a team until they get help. Proposing her strategy, Jiangxia says she'll research how to escape while Howard keeps them safe, surprising him with her attitude. Agreeing, he remembers that she saved his life. Looking to the side, Howard takes a deep breath. Asking himself, Howard wonders if she carries a gun with her. Realizing she does, he questions if that's a common habit among survivors. Explaining her intention, Jiangxia says she thought she might have to use special methods to calm him down, but now she's relieved to see how composed he is. Expanding on the idea, she states that in a life-or-death moment, a mental breakdown would destroy any chance of survival. Not quite understanding, Howard just stares at her. Realizing the situation, he understands she planned to calm him down with the gun. Recalling a warning about Jiangxia being a powerful and astute woman, he concludes that she sees the big picture before telling the robot he has something to do. Leaving the bathroom, he walks away. Alone, Jiangxia reflects that Howard is an ordinary person still bound by morality, which is good, as she has no time to waste on him. Announcing its status, the robot says it's feeling much better and its acoustic generator can now function normally. Questioning the machine's attitude, Howard asks why it didn't say a word when Jiangxia was with them, and the robot replies that it can't understand the subtext in human languages. Stating his boundaries, Howard says Jiangxia can do whatever she wants, as long as she doesn't interfere with his training to face the creatures. Questioning his mission, the robot asks about attacking the mutant animals, warning that it's dangerous. Saying he has no other choice, Howard explains that in another world, he also lived through a time of destruction. Continuing the memory, he recounts how the mutant animals there nearly took his life. Remembering the past, Howard thinks about how the conflict wouldn't stop unless the waves of destruction disappeared. Venting, he says he traded everything he had for an achievement that was effortlessly destroyed by someone else. Affirming his conviction, he says that for him, true defeat is surrendering and running away, and that he must persevere. Asking naively, the machine wants to know if the other world is the heaven where humans went, and Howard questions why it always thinks about that. Explaining his view, Howard says that for him, heaven is his home, a place with safety, loyalty, and warmth. Concluding his faith, he states that if he can overcome this challenge, he can save his home. Saying it understands, the robot comments that heaven is amazing, and it's no wonder all the humans went there. Offering to help, the machine says it would love to assist him in saving his heaven. Agreeing, Howard states that he'll need it to heal him when he gets injured, and asks to be called by his name. Surprised, the machine reacts, as only humans call each other by their names. On the second day, Jiangxia bites into a hard energy bar. Analyzing the panel, she comments that the welding is typical of Howard's work. With new armor, the robot proves to be tough and durable, repeating its command to clean up the mess. Asking the robot, Howard Chen wants to know if those are the giant bolts it mentioned. Questioning the reason, he asks why they would have so many in storage. Explaining their use, the robot says that without ammunition, They used the bolts to ward off monsters, but the device was abandoned when the environment worsened. Commenting that the story is sad, Howard observes everything as Jiangxia sees them and asks if he's heading out. Confirming, he reminds her that their deal was for him to defeat the monsters. Saying that's unnecessary, Jiangxia claims the records show there were already 1 million beasts 3 years ago and that their task is to keep the camp safe. Responding firmly, Howard says he only has 180 days and doesn't want to wait for the monsters to find him. Questioning his decision, she asks why he's creating trouble for himself. Recalling the danger, Jiangxia mentions the animal's caustic fluid and a 2-story tall chimpanzee she saw. Stressing the severity, she says they can't afford any mistakes and must conserve their strength until she finds the sanctuary. Challenging her words, Howard asks if she's trying to tell him what to do in his own world. Remembering the past, he thinks about how he was almost helpless in a bed, with people trying to attack him, and affirms that he needs to get stronger as fast as possible. Clarifying his boundaries, he says he agreed to look after her out of gratitude, but that doesn't give her the right to interfere with his work, and she can leave if she wants. Watching him in silence for a moment, Jiangxia just stares. Saying she was just worried about his safety, she wishes him a good trip. Stating his frustration, Howard says that talking to an NPC is pointless, and prepares to leave with Robot 2003, which repeats its cleaning command. Reflecting alone, Jiangxia concludes she was wrong about Howard, as he doesn't behave like a mediocre man, and she wonders what's going on in his mind. Questioning his sanity, she doesn't notice the giant snake approaching from behind. Turning around, she sees the massive creature. Hearing a voice that questions her worth, she screams for it to shut up and tries to run away. Calling for her to join them, the voices echo as skeletal hands surround her in the darkness. Observing the scene, a shadowy figure watches her as she ties up her hair. Returning to reality, she takes a deep breath and composes herself atop the fortress. Deciding on her strategy, she understands she needs to develop a friendly relationship with Howard, as she won't survive if she tries to go to the sanctuary alone. Commenting on his behavior, the robot says Howard's tone is different, and he replies that if he had been tougher in the past, he wouldn't have let them threaten him. Explaining his mistake, Howard says that after the previous dream, he thought all people were good. In a memory, a woman is told that the person she was looking for had already left the night before. Recounting the past, the woman says Josh Tai fought to save her life and asks them to convince him to leave the dangerous groups now that he's out of prison. Deciding his stance, Howard affirms that whether in a dream or in real life, he should no longer have fantasies about human nature or salvation. In another memory, the hooded man mocks him for not fighting back and questions if he thinks he's a god. Questioning his value, the hooded man asks if Howard is rich or powerful and what he could offer to make him work for him. Stating his view, Howard says that saving lives is a hero's job, something he can do without, and that most people are barely decent. Repeating its limitation, the machine again says it's a human language it can't understand. Encountering new obstacles, they come across 2 giant, multi-headed wolves in their path. Identifying the threat, the robot says they are ferocious mutant wolves, but Howard states they are exactly what he wanted and that it's time to work. Warning him of the risk, the machine says the wolves' combat score is higher than his. Preparing for battle, Howard holds one of his darts. Joining forces, his former deer-headed self joins him. Running side by side, his new deer-headed persona charges into battle. Advancing ferociously, one of the giant beasts lunges to attack. Without wasting a moment, Howard strikes one of the wolves. Fighting a pack of mutant wolves, Howard Chen attacks one and takes down another. With some effort, he forces the wolf's jaw shut. Bracing himself, he struggles to block a direct hit from another wolf. With a final move, he immobilizes the creature's head. Pinning the animal down, Howard finally neutralizes it. His hand injured in the process, he calls for Robot 2003. Sitting on the ground, he listens as the robot explains that the fluid from the pustules is caustic, and that fighting bare-handed is part of his training. Spotting a tent in the distance, Robot 2003 wonders why one of the shelter's tents would be out here. Lifting the tent flap, Howard finds a box that the robot also identifies as belonging to the shelter. Opening the box, he finds a container marked with a symbol and asks what it means. Robot 2003 announces they are wheat seeds, pointing to the symbol for the wheat shelter. But Howard remarks that the name sounds more like a farm. The robot explains that other shelters used to trade materials before they were destroyed, which makes the story sound familiar to Howard. He recalls seeing various monsters like boars and insects roaming the area and connects the dots. Seeing the destroyed camp with monsters guarding a box, the scene looks like an expedition quest. Realizing the pattern, Howard understands his situation is like a typical survival game where players have to craft items and explore. He asks Robot 2003 if the environment is suitable for agriculture and gets the answer that soil can be produced from rocks. The robot also explains it can use animal waste and monster ashes to create fertilizer. Suggesting they use the body of a giant bird from the shelter to start planting at night, Howard tries to get a head start. Robot 2003 says it would love to farm, but points out that the ocean of corrosion will affect the plants. Comforting the robot, Howard says their work will be useful when the humans return, leaving the robot surprised. Elsewhere, AI-63 reveals that the game's main challenge is to measure how much the future of humanity can improve with the player's help. Back in the desert, Robot 2003 mentions that humans will be considered in the final evaluation, and Howard decides to prepare for his 180-day stay. Agreeing with the idea, the robot states that if the shelter returns to how it was, the humans will come back. Recalling the past, it describes the shelter as a peaceful place, something humans wouldn't just abandon. Staring at his companion, Howard simply asks if this place was once a home. Looking out at the desert together, they repeat the word home. At dusk, Howard charges a giant spider and strikes it. Falling to the ground, he quickly grabs a rock to continue the attack. He relentlessly strikes the creature with the rock until a screen displays the number 70. Receiving a notification that his combat score has dropped, he listens as the robot explains it's calculated based on the monster's strength and the combat status. Displaying a new score, Robot 2003 notes that Howard was at 90 points in his prime, but has now dropped to 70. Carrying a sack, Howard questions what this means, since he's never lost a battle. The robot replies that his will to fight is fading. According to the robot, he's just using his body to vent his anger. Asking for some privacy, Howard reflects on how dream training can prepare him for real-life enemies and pressures. Concluding his reflection, he realizes that in desperate times, people do things to pretend they're saving themselves, even knowing it might not work. Questioning the need to return to the other world, Robot 2003 provokes him, but Howard asserts that a place without his family can't be called home. Commenting on the future, he tells the robot that rebuilding the shelter is a good idea to keep hope alive for the return of its former inhabitants. Returning inside the base, Jiangxia congratulates him on the good harvest, and he asks where the giant bird's body is. Explaining the situation, she says monster flesh contains too many chemicals, and that she cleaned up the body to avoid attracting other creatures. Deciding on the next step, Howard states that the next day he will defeat some monsters to use as fertilizer. Trying to bite into some food he can't chew and wonders if his muscles have been affected by the erosion. Watching him from behind, Jiangxia sees him suggest that maybe he can eat it if he soaks the food in water. Averting her gaze, she stares at the seed containers he had collected. Noticing there's only one potion left, Howard asks if they can find more elsewhere. Robot 2003 suggests exploring a safer shelter, getting support from Jiangxia, who agrees he needs to prepare for a supply run. Later, his name echoes in her voice as she stares at a bowl of noodles. Explaining she cooked with the grains he brought back since he seemed to be having trouble chewing, Jiangxia tells him to eat while it's hot. Turning to her, Howard asks if she used all the seeds he found. Replying calmly, Jiangxia says she didn't use all of them, as she ground some up and saved them as powder. Sitting in silence next to Robot 2003, Howard avoids dragging out the conversation. Questioning if he really planned to plant the seeds, Jiangxia explains that the environment isn't suitable and the land will soon be flooded. Remarking that he didn't expect her to waste the seeds so quickly, Howard states he's used to dealing with problems. Advising her not to make decisions on her own next time, he tells her to eat the noodles without the robot seeing. Remaining motionless, Jiangxia just stares at him seriously. Continuing to watch him, she observes the moment Howard comforts Robot 2003. On the third day, Howard prepares 3 vials of potion for the trip. Remarking that the potions will be enough for an emergency, he hears the robot remind him that his safety comes first. As he is about to leave, Jiangxia calls him over to talk. He turns and asks what she wants to say. Saying the records contain instructions on robots, Jiangxia states she could try to upgrade Robot 2003, since she understands electronics. Turning around completely, Howard questions if upgrading the robot would actually work. With her eyes closed, she replies that regardless of success, they need to stop suffering more losses. Continuing her explanation, Jiangxia says the robot is old, and if it fails, she can at least extract the data before the chip breaks. Arguing that 2003 has always been loyal, Howard hears Jiangxia reply that it's just a machine and she's trying to make the most of it. With a firm tone, she asks if Howard truly sees it as a friend. Replying that he hates her sarcastic tone, Howard questions if showing sympathy makes him less of a man. Adding that he's even considered befriending a tiger, he hears Jiangxia state that a real machine only focuses on the result. Walking away, he says they have different opinions and should talk less to avoid arguments. Watching him leave, Jiangxia thinks his downfall is near and that he's irrational for not focusing on survival. Grabbed by shadowy hands, she realizes the episodes are becoming more frequent. Outside, Howard and Robot 2003 spot birds of prey, and he wonders why they haven't been attacked yet. Explaining they are scavengers and won't get angry if they stay away from their nests, the robot makes him decide they need to clear the nest on the roof. Telling Howard that the ocean of erosion spread because humans used to fight a lot, Robot 2003 asks him and Jiangxia to stop fighting. Asking what people fought over, Howard realizes there's a hidden story behind this dream. The robot explains that people with different powers negotiated and argued, but did nothing while the erosion expanded. exposing their failure. Admitting he didn't think much about it, Howard says he got carried away while talking to Jiangxia. Summing up the root cause of the disputes, he comments that an excessive focus on differences makes some people impose their opinions and label others. Stating that he won't hold a grudge against a virtual NPC, he says he knows how to recognize when it's just a game. Approaching a vast area of undergrowth stirring in the wind, he walks alongside the robot. Hurrying him along, Robot 2003 reminds him that the day's task is to explore the abandoned camps, but Howard hesitates. Spotting a truck with a giant creature on top, he comments that there seems to be something interesting inside. Questioning if he's serious about approaching that scene, the robot shows concern. Warning that it's a ruler-class beast, one of the region's top predators, the robot says they would need heavy equipment to defeat it. Replying that he won't fight it alone, Howard states they need to play like experienced gamers, starting by not leaving the area and saving their progress. Informing him that it doesn't have an F5 key, the robot assures him that it's with him. Lighting a fire to get the creature's attention, Howard watches as it turns toward the flames. The creature roars loudly, distracted, while he takes the opportunity to start driving the truck away. Opening the back door of the truck, he discovers they've secured a makeshift shelter. A worn-out truck stands idle in the desert, its back door is wide open. Inside, Howard Chen assesses the supplies. He finds honey, a musical instrument, a toolbox, and substances that could be turned into explosives. He finds a crystal in a container and realizes it seems to be the most valuable item of all. Seeing a symbol on a device, he understands the eggs can be thawed and hatched, so he decides to take the important items. The crystal's container is too heavy, so he opens it to take just the gem, thinking Robot 2003 might get tired. But as he touches the gem, it reacts to the sand on his fingers. The crystal then throws him backward with a sudden jolt. Thrown out of the truck, Howard hits the ground. The entire truck is then violently launched into the air. The robot warns him to be careful, just as the giant creature hears the noise. Grabbing a cloth, Howard runs away from the monster. Hiding in a crevice, he stays out of reach of the creature's tongue. Plummeting from the sky, the truck crashes into the mountain. The impact causes a huge explosion at the point of collision, and a rock slide begins to sweep down the mountainside. Amidst the flow of debris, Howard slides down the slope as the creature stumbles. The monster struggles to climb the cliff face to escape while the young man continues to fall. Clinging to a crack in the rock, Howard states he would have been defeated if he'd fallen into the ocean of erosion. Looking aside with a determined expression, he regains his focus. Watching the creature, which has also clung to the slope, he wonders what it will do. Seeing the sacs on the monster's body begin to swell, he prepares to react. Then the creature shoots a jet of a substance from the sacs on its shoulders. As Robot 2003 yells for Howard to hold on, a cloud rushes toward him. Shielding himself with an object, he endures the impact of the attack and the falling debris. Howard then injects the contents of the vials into his leg. A large plume of smoke rises from the cliff, and the creature watches the result. After that, the creature simply turns and leaves. On the fourth day, Robot 2003 watches over a campfire inside a cave. The young man finally gets up, and the small robot announces that he's awake. Remarking that Howard survived the collapse and that it has never seen a human with such willpower, the robot shows its admiration. Downplaying the event, Howard claims to be an experienced player in risky situations, but admits that being hit by the substance was the worst experience ever. Asking about the red gem that exploded, Robot 2003 listens as the young man explains it must have been a very valuable energy core. Clarifying that rubbing it with sand releases energy and that a strong impact would make it explode, the robot says it's just like the core from their shelter. Asking if Howard didn't see a dust-proof device near it, the robot tries to understand the mistake. Asking the robot to tell him what else he needs to know to avoid another explosion, the young man hears the machine warn of a new imminent danger. Revealing that his human companion was marked by the giant creature's substance, the robot says he must prepare for unexpected attacks. Howard looks at the mark on his back, realizing it's a signal and that part of his skin looks burned. Noticing the numbness in his left hand, he uses only his right to touch his chest. Sitting by the fire, he remembers the box of eggs and asks the robot if it still exists. Confirming the eggs are safe, Robot 2003 reports they are still incubating at the ideal temperature. Then the small machine opens its compartment and releases the eggs onto the cave floor. Howard asks if the robot's shelter also produced eggs, and it confirms they raised chickens, ducks, and other animals. Recalling the mountains, the machine remembers the shepherds tending to their sheep. Holding an egg, he remarks that he hasn't forgotten that time either and misses the rooster crowing in his old village. But he remembers that as he grew up, the way back home became frightening, and he had to forget what happened. Finding it strange that fear and longing appear at the same time, Robot 2003 questions this, since Howard had said home was a paradise. Howard agrees and admits he also wants to go home to find his father. He'd like to tell his dad to stop working because he's rich now and has paid off the family's debts. But looking at the egg, he laments that he can't say that. He also wanted to tell his mom not to blame herself for the deaths because now he has a boyfriend and a family. And in fact, he realizes he really can't say any of that to them. Howard explains that his parents blame themselves for the debt, and a word of comfort would only make them feel more guilty. His real fear was that his parents would open the hospital emergency room door and see him in critical condition. He reveals that he always thought of that incident as a sharp knife for both him and his parents. They both remain silent before the campfire in a cave. Robot 2003 then calls him by name and asks if he wants a hug, as the children at the shelter used to do that when they were sad. But Howard says he's not a child and that as an adult, he's resistant to their stress. Leaning on his robotic companion, he comments that his greatest advantage in this dream game is that there isn't a single human. Howard continues explaining that being heard complaining is a social disgrace and that many people who hide their grievances need a hug. Asking if the eggs can hatch in the incubator, he gets a yes from the robot, but is told they need to add sand so they don't break. As he places an egg in the sand, he mentions he found it funny that he wanted to be a scientist as a child and dreamed of buying his own microscope. Howard declares that while he wouldn't dare do it in real life in the game, he wants to be able to see the rooster crow before the world ends. Noticing a scratch on the robot's head, he asks how the iron he placed there feels. On the cave floor, there are a few feathers and scattered pieces of metal. Robot 2003 explains that iron scavengers attacked it while it slept, and it scared them off with fire, damaging them as they fled. Howard thanks it for the information, acknowledging that his companion fought a fierce battle. Robot 2003 says it still can't believe what happened, as its greatest wish to see humans again was fulfilled and it found hope. Reflecting that humans always lie, it notes they promise to return and don't, but in the end, it was a human who saved it. Howard listens in silence as he looks back. Turning to the robot, he admits he doesn't know what to say to an NPC. The machine suggests that for now, Howard can treat it like his family, just as it was in the previous shelter. Surprise, Robot 2003 repeats the word family and declares it has never had a family member before. Howard places a hand on its head as they approach a path, stating that this is the trail to the monster's lair. In the distance, a giant furry creature stands in the middle of the canyon. The robot explains that's the Hulk, another ruling-class monster likely drawn by the sound of yesterday's explosion. Howard wonders how the giant lizard will react to its territory being invaded, and the machine predicts a fierce battle will ensue. Realizing that while the monsters fight, they'll be safe to grab the energy core, he hears his companion reveal that it's as powerful as a nuclear bomb. Howard is startled by the comparison, but soon sees the situation as a chance to solve two problems at once. Birds fly over a wall where a figure lies on the ground. One of the birds lies near an opening in the wall. Howard peeks from behind the wall. Outside the shelter, a bonfire is lit. Suddenly, a spear flies out and embeds itself in the wall right next to him. Then the weapon explodes, and Robot 2003 shouts his name. Jiangxia peeks around the same corner of the wall. Entering the area with her bow, she asks if he's okay. Inside the shelter, she explains that she made preparations during the 2 days he was gone. Howard complains that she almost hit him. He asks if she was the one who dealt with the birds and their nest, waiting for an answer. Jiangxia explains that the eagles kept attacking, the weapon wasn't working, and she found other uses for the power core in the manual. Using the facility to cut pieces from the core, she turned everything into weapons. Even though she's practiced archery, she admits she still gets nervous using the weapon. Howard praises her, saying she's amazing and must have a very high IQ. After that, he asks her for some seeds from the power core, as he needs to leave again soon. Jiangxia grabs his arm and asks him to stay for a few more days. Revealing she found a clue about a place called Under the Moon, she states that the humans probably fled there. But Howard warns her they won't make it there, as a giant lizard is chasing him and could destroy the shelter at any moment. Holding an energy seed, he instructs Jiangxia to use everything she has and wait, as he will deal with the lizard himself. Appearing beside them, Robot 2003 announces it needs to recharge and transfer the eggs to the incubator in the basement. Howard then asks Jiangxia to take care of the eggs he got on his hunt, since the shelter has an incubator. She agrees to look after the eggs, saying she likes small animals and that he can leave everything to her. He then asks her if anything strange happened in the last 2 days, commenting that she seems different. Jiangxia replies that she's just changed a little and he doesn't need to worry, leaving him silent. Outside, Howard examines the explosive spear, but wonders if just 4 energy cores will be enough. Asking Robot 2003 if any lizards have been detected, he hears the reply that there are no monsters nearby. The small robot explains that its radar was used to find lost animals and its range is very limited. Suddenly, the structure begins to shake and pieces of the ceiling crumble down around Howard and the robot. He wonders if it's the lizard, but Robot 2003 insists that the radar can't find any monsters. Jiangxia appears and tells them not to panic, revealing the problem is a leak in the power room. Robot 2003 assures them it's just a temporary power outage and it will fix it as soon as possible, but it's worried about the eggs. Howard warns that the eggs in the incubator could spoil if the temperature isn't corrected in time. Finding the entrance blocked by a large rock, they decide to move it to get through. Inside the incubator, the indicator lights on the eggs begin to fail. Jiangxia appears, announcing the power system is fixed, and immediately asks about the eggs. Howard informs her that only one will be able to hatch, as the others didn't make it. Robot 2003 looks at the incubator, where only one egg has survived. Howard remains silent for a moment. Then he asks the robot to place the remaining egg in its own incubator, and they leave. Jiangxia questions the safety of leaving the robot to care for the only life that's left. He reassures her, saying it was a small accident and that she'll be able to hold the animals when they're born. Howard then decides to leave the egg with Robot 2003 because to him, it wasn't just an egg, it was hope. Jiangxia reacts with displeasure. Confronting him, she says that machines don't have emotions and he's being weird for talking about life with them, demanding the egg back. But Howard says no and states that she's been acting strange, while the robot asks them not to fight. Robot 2003's radar detects the creature outside, which lets out a roar. Announcing the lizard has appeared on the monitor, it hears Howard instruct it to stay and protect the egg. But the robot refuses, saying Howard is its family, leaving the young man speechless. He agrees, but warns it to stay away from the fight as he runs outside, with the machine following him. Jiangxia watches the scene, questioning their idea of family and thinking it's all crazy. Then, a giant tail appears, and a voice asks where she thinks she's going. Running out of the shelter, Howard charges forward without looking back. Stomping thunderously, the giant creature relentlessly pursues him. Warning Robot 2003, he says they need to lure the monster into the mountains to keep it from destroying the shelter. Climbing the canyon wall, the giant lizard scrambles up after them. Realizing the situation, he understands the monster won't come down, as the area is too narrow to fight in. So he decides it's time to use the explosive he's carrying. Throwing the object, he hurls it against the canyon wall. Exploding far from the target, the charge detonates, but Howard assures the robot he did it on purpose. Calmly explaining, he says the distraction was to buy time for the other monster's movement and asks how far away it is. Reporting the data, Robot 2003 states that it has increased its speed. Roaring loudly, the lizard realizes the other one is moving at high speed and could approach at any moment. His robotic companion warns that the battlefield is near and asks what their plan is. Continuing the run, Howard states they're going to make some noise. Echoing across the field, a large explosion erupts. Observing the distant smoke, the lizard analyzes everything from the top of the cliff. Warning of the danger ahead, Robot 2003 mentions a corrosive sea and that the lizard is close. Howard replies that he'll buy time while telling his companion to turn right. Advancing through the canyon, they are pressed by the narrow terrain. Keeping up at high speed, the robot runs beside him, but the gorilla monster appears, blocking the path, and Howard greets it, saying it's still in his way. Appearing right behind, the giant lizard closes off the route, and Robot 2003 warns that they're trapped between the two. Analyzing the mountain to the right, Howard notices the rocks look quite weathered. Grabbing his spear, he instructs the robot to follow him. Roaring in unison, the two monsters face off as he charges with his spear between them and yells for them to run. Tossing an explosive behind him, he throws it as the monsters chase them through the narrow canyon. In the midst of the dust, the gorilla creature charges at the lizard. Taking cover in a hole in the wall, Howard and the robot hide, but he realizes the space is too small for them to stay there for long. Outside, the battle between the two monsters rages on. Bracing itself on the ground, the lizard faces its opponent. Throwing sand at the lizard, the gorilla then strikes it hard. From his hiding spot, Howard watches the fight and concludes that the gorilla seems to be superior. Launching a direct attack, the lizard hits the gorilla's chest, making it roar. Falling to its knees, the creature releases a substance onto the ground. Approaching its fallen opponent, the lizard advances with a predatory stance. Taking advantage of the distraction, Howard attacks the lizard with his spear, but the blow is blocked. With the weapon's tip damaged, he hurls it towards the creature's open mouth. Realizing the attack wasn't strong enough, he readies the weapon in another way. Concentrating, he prepares a new attack. Launching a projectile, Howard watches it connect with another in midair. The weapon hits the lizard's head and enters its mouth. With an internal explosion, the creature is neutralized and falls to the ground. Debris from the explosion flies past him, and Robot 2003 congratulates him on the victory. Lamenting the outcome, he comments that despite his skill, all he got from the fight was sweat. Suddenly calling out to him, Robot 2003 asks what's happening. Inside the incubator, the egg begins to move and crack. Announcing the news, the small machine reports that the egg in the incubator is about to hatch. A storm is forming in the sky, growing larger as lightning tears through the clouds. Howard asks Robot 2003 what kind of weather this is because nothing feels right. The robot identifies the phenomenon as the annual farmer typhoon, which will bring acid rain and sandstorms for the next 48 hours. The robot warns him that the disaster will arrive in 10 minutes, so Howard decides to use his last grenade to blast open a cave for shelter. Howard asks his companion if he heard a familiar beeping sound, but the robot replies that it can't hear anything over the strong wind. Meanwhile, the egg finally cracks open, and Robot 2003 celebrates that its dream of rebuilding the shelter is about to come true. But the beeping sound around Howard grows louder. Convinced he's heard it before, Howard knows the sound is a warning of danger. He recognizes the noise, associating it with the countdown timers from shooter games. Turning around, Howard realizes the beeping is coming from the fallen creature. The sacs on the monster's body pulse, intermittently vibrating nonstop. Swelling aggressively, they fire a projectile, forcing Howard to dodge as Robot 2003 is thrown aside. After that, the sacks explode violently. The creature is defeated, and the impact hurls Howard into a pool of liquid. The substance burns his skin as birds begin to land on the canyon floor. Using an item, he staggers as a swarm of birds surrounds him. He falls to the ground, parts of his equipment scattering alongside an energy flask. He then runs as fast as he can while the birds strike him from behind. Kicking the energy flask hard, he makes a desperate attempt to escape. The flask collides with the rock wall, shattering on impact. It then explodes, the gem blasting a hole in the mountainside. The explosion creates an opening in the rock face. A new passage is formed, revealing a cave entrance that offers a chance of survival. Running toward the shelter, he just needs one more second, but claws reach him from behind and his injured body collapses to the ground. Attacked by the birds as he tries to move, he realizes his mistake only made things worse. Regretting that he wasn't smarter, he believes his time has come. The next moment, a giant bird charges at Howard, but Robot 2003 pulls him away and tells him to hang on. The small machine fires a projectile in response, as Howard, being dragged, yells for it to get away. Dragging his companion into the cave, the robot positions itself to block the entrance. Lying on the ground, Howard tells the robot to forget it, that he can't go on. Insisting he will survive, Robot 2003 assures him that it will take care of him. The small machine moves through the cave, approaching its injured companion. Howard says the robot should leave, adding he's happy to see it survive with the chick. Refusing to leave, the machine reaffirms that he is its family. Howard asks the robot to abandon its program script, saying the journey is over and any attempt to prolong it will only bring suffering. Urging it to go, Howard states that birds aren't interested in metal and that it's time to face reality. Suddenly, a bird attacks the robot at the cave entrance. Blocking the attack, the robot declares it can offer safety. As it's hit repeatedly, it promises to offer loyalty. Watched in silence by Howard, the robot offers warmth. Even under the constant blows, Robot 2003 offers light and the cure for everything. In a flashback, Howard is seen fixing the robot, saying that home is a paradise where one finds safety, loyalty, light, and healing. Injured, he begs the robot not to do this. With one blow, the giant bird strikes the small robot's head. The bird's beak glows as Howard watches the scene. The blow damages Robot 2003's chest, causing it to emit smoke and leak fluid. Its head makes a metallic hissing sound in the air. Floating moments later, the robot states that humans can lie, but it cannot, as Howard begs it to stop. Promising a place cleaner than paradise, it asks its companion not to leave. Showing the shelter in a vision, the robot's voice says it has cleaned everything perfectly and asks if anyone wants to take a look, or if anyone is there. Back in the present, the birds attack the robot. Engulfed in smoke and fire, the small robot suffers while Howard begs it not to do this. Trembling under the impacts, the machine reacts as a voice says no. On the sixth day, the sun hangs over the desolate landscape. Stretched out on the ground amidst the dust, a body lies motionless. Lying on his back, Howard wonders if this is the end of the world. Tied to his arm, the damaged Robot 2003 explains that the sandstorm drove away the scavengers and that its radar is still working to guide them back. As he's being dragged, he asks if he's paralyzed, but the machine reassures him, saying it's the effect of the injections. Promising to fix it as soon as he can move again, Howard tries to stay calm. Suddenly, the robot's wheel gets stuck, and its frame begins to break apart as it's dragged. Soon after, the small machine's body is destroyed in an explosion. Its components scatter across the ground, mixing with the dust. Asking Howard to tell it how he will remodel the shelter, the burning robot says it wants to hear now. Taking a deep breath, Howard closes his eyes for a moment. Finally agreeing, he tells the machine to listen carefully. Describing a path of mud and cement, Howard explains that it will lead to the shelter. Continuing his vision, he talks about planting tall, straight poplar trees along the road. Planning ahead, he imagines an open field on the left to grow wheat, soybeans, and corn. Following his plan, he says he will plant rapeseed flowers on the right side of the road, which will bloom in the spring. Down the dirt road, a light appears, shining on the horizon. He says he'll have a large acacia tree there, explaining that he'll be able to see it every time he leaves. He recalls when he was lost and confused, thinking of times like being rejected for a job because he lacked experience or a good degree. Remembering when he didn't know where to go, he pictures himself running in the rain to catch a bus that had already left. A taxi driver informs him that it was the last bus and offers him a ride. He politely declines, saying he'd rather walk as he clutches a coin. Stopping in the rain at that moment, he would simply turn back. Imagining the tree, he believes it would always be there for him, just like when he started his journey. In flames, the robot comments that it's a lovely tree and that with it, humans will no longer get lost. Agreeing, Howard admits he's been lost for a long time. Warning that it has detected a barrier before the shelter, Robot 2003 continues to operate. Stating that it arrived at this place clean, it declares that it will leave clean too. Continuing, the small machine says, as long as it keeps the place cleaner than paradise. It interrupts itself, stopping as it reads a sign warning of danger and indicating a detour. Screaming for Robot 2003 not to go there, Howard watches as its wheel hits something on the ground. Calling him by name, the small machine speaks from amidst the flames. Exploding moments later, a shockwave hurls him away. Falling face down on the ground, he coughs with difficulty. Robot debris rains down from the sky, and a piece with its serial number lands in the dust. Lying next to the fragments, he wonders why the world has to be so cruel to him. A hand reaches across the ground for a circular object, but another hand, quicker, snatches the object first. Running with the item, Jiangxia moves forward as Howard watches her from the ground. Muttering the name Sharon Yang, he tries to call out to her, and as she runs away, he shouts her name again. On the 8th day, Howard's hand rests on a sheet. Suddenly sitting up, he gets out of bed. Walking to the sink, Howard drinks a glass of water. A memory flashes in his mind. Jiangxia running with the object. It unnerves him. He throws the door open, shouting Sharon Yang's name. Running down the hall, he demands to know where she is. He storms forward, demanding to know why she deceived him. In another room, Jiangxia prepares to use a tool. Finally finding her, Howard appears before her. As he watches, Robot 2003 system initiates a reboot. Memory system recovering. Robot 2003 appears to be fixed. The machine calls out his name, making its presence known. Wondering how it's possible, Howard stares at Jiangxia as she expresses disbelief, saying she thought the robot had been destroyed. She explains that the metal ring is the central controller, so the robot can be repaired as long as it's intact. Robot 2003 excitedly celebrates having hands, being clean, and having all new parts. The machine shows off, announcing that a cooking system has been installed in its head. It demonstrates the improvements, revealing that a fighting system with an activated heat conductor has been placed in its arms. Celebrating having chips for both cooking and fighting, the robot asks if it's become an elite model. Analyzing the entire robot, Howard marvels at how quickly the work was done. Jiangxia reminds him that she said the robot could be upgraded, then criticizes him for choosing scrap metal instead of the frames available in the maintenance room. Accusing him of not wanting to learn anything, she claims he takes his frustration out on her. Howard defends himself, saying she had mentioned the robot could be damaged in the process. She retorts that scientific tests don't guarantee success. She calls him reckless, saying if she hadn't fixed the robot, the situation would have become dangerous for her. Denying the accusation, he tries to respond, but Jiangxia says they need to talk later because she's too tired. Jiangxia justifies her actions, stating that he was gone for days and she needed to protect herself. She asks how he triggered the traps if he left a note. Howard accuses Jiangxia of getting sentimental when they talk about science, complaining that she leaves him alone whenever he wants to make a plan. Screaming that he always finds excuses to blame her, she says she doesn't know what she did wrong. Crying, Jiangxia says she just wants to survive and has no ill intentions. Howard apologizes, admitting he hadn't thought about that. Turning to leave, she walks away as he asks her not to be upset. Jiangxia informs him that simple charging won't meet the robot's needs. Only the power core will work, but he has to get it himself. Confused, Howard decides he needs to change his attitude. He can't seem to handle an NPC who's good at arguing. As she walks away, she ties up her hair, noting that he's stubborn and can't stand it when others are tough on him. Deciding to play his game, Jiangxia resolves to back down at the right moment, considering the situation a draw. Howard tells Robot 2003 that with his family back, he has regained his confidence. The machine asks if he can still fight after being damaged by a corrosive substance. Howard explains that he can move normally, but admits his hands won't stop shaking, which keeps him from throwing projectiles. The robot instructs him to stand still, saying it will fight for him using its fighting chip abilities, which give it a score of 300. Questioning the reliability of that score, Howard mentions that his is only 90. The machine explains that the standard fighting robot chip was passed down from 400 years ago and offers to show him what it can do. Listing skills like boxing, judo, karate, and various martial arts styles, the robot claims that humans have even higher fighting scores. Stunned by this revelation, Howard tries to wrap his head around the absurd difference.